Su Shunning was reborn. The first thing she saw upon waking was the divorce papers Fu Sihan held out to her. His voice was cold and detached. Ning Ning, the girl is pregnant and demanding a proper status. Let's get a divorce. I'll give you any compensation you want. This day was the 7th wedding anniversary of Su Shunning and Fu Sihan. After being unreachable all night, the first thing Fu Sihan did upon returning was to ask her for a divorce. He said he had found his true love. Su Shunning stared at the man's handsome, refined face, her mind reeling. In her past life, she had simply grabbed the fruit knife from the coffee table and plunged it into his chest. Warm blood splattered across her face. With eyes blazing red, she demanded of him, if she is your true love, then what were my 7 years, Su Shunning's 7 years, supposed to be? Once, their love burned fiercely. In the end, their hatred was absolute. She tore up the divorce papers. And they spent a full decade torturing each other. When Ying was pregnant, but she had someone drag her into the operating room for an abortion, he returned home expressionless and kicked the child out of her womb. At Wen Ying's birthday party, she sent people to smash the place up and left a pile of dead rats. At her birthday celebration, Fu Sihan locked her in a secret room, with only a pile of cold snakes for company. One by one, Fu Sihan, who had once cherished and protected her like a precious jewel, now tormented her to the point of utter devastation, all for the sake of another woman, all for the sake of Wen Ying. Her family's company was driven to bankruptcy, and her parents were pushed to their deaths, leaping from a building. Her self-respect and her pride were ground into dust. In the end, suffering from schizophrenia, she experienced a hallucination while driving across Linjiang Bridge, veered off the road, and plunged into the river to her death. As if looking through the veil of past and present lives, Su Shunning took the divorce papers once more, her gaze towards him utterly calm and unreadable. I want 70% of the marital assets, and 51% of the shares in Aining Group. Fu Sihan hadn't expected her to be so composed. He looked at her, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. After 7 years of marriage, he had thought he knew her best. But now he found himself unable to see through her. Are you really willing to get a divorce? Su Shunning nodded calmly. Don't worry, you pay, and I'll let him go. Fu Sihan narrowed his sharp eyes, his tone laced with warning. Ning Ning, don't play games with me. I've never been one to fall for that push-and-pull routine. Our divorce has nothing to do with Ying. If I find out you've gone behind my back to give that girl a hard time, you know exactly how I'll react. Every single word was a defense of the one he held dear. Su Shunning's knuckles turned white as she clutched the divorce papers. After a decade in her past life, she knew all too well the depths of his ruthless nature. Without another word, Su Shunning carefully signed her name on the document. Stroke by deliberate stroke, Fu Sihan stared at the signature, momentarily stunned. His gaze fell on her red-rimmed eyes, and thinking of her stubborn pride, he let out a sigh. Ning Ning, I'm the one who's failed you. If you ever find yourself in trouble, you can always come to me. Even if we're not husband and wife, you'll always be family to me. Su Shunning looked at the shallow remorse in his eyes and smiled. Get lost. Fu Sihan took the divorce papers and turned to leave. I'll get the share transfer agreement to you as soon as possible. Su Shunning watched his receding figure, her eyes cold. As memories surfaced, she got lost as a little girl. When her grandmother found her and brought her home, there was already an older brother in the family, Fu Sihan. Life was hard for them back then, yet in Su Shunning's memory, only sweetness remains. Fu Sihan was good to her from the very beginning, so good that she became utterly lost in his kindness. If she so much as glanced at a princess dress with longing, he would secretly take on 3 part-time jobs after school, saving up every penny to buy it for her. As she passed the hot pot restaurant, she couldn't help but swallow a secretive gulp of longing. He had survived on plain steamed buns for 3 months, saving every penny to take her there for a meal. He was gloomy and aloof to the world, yet he held her alone in the palm of his hand, shielding her from even a speck of dust. He gave her every last ounce of his love. The year her grandmother passed away, her parents came knocking. She returned to the Su family home, bringing Fu Sihan with her. The Su family was wealthy and influential. Her parents looked down on Fu Sihan for being an orphan and tried to buy him off. It was Su Shunning who knelt before her parents, declaring she would marry no one but him. If they drove him away, she would leave with him. At that moment, Fu Sihan knelt beside her and made a solemn vow to her parents. He vowed that within 10 years, he would make a name for himself and give her a good life. He said he loved Su Shunning more than he loved himself. He swore that in this life, he would rather die than betray a sincere heart. the once brooding and rebellious youth had matured into a poised and distinguished new magnate of the Beijing business circle. He could finally make her happy with ease, yet he told her, he had fallen for someone else, in her past life. She remained stubbornly deluded for 10 years, in this life, she finally learned to let go. Su Shunning wiped her tears, took out her phone, and dialed her mother's number. Mrs. Su answered almost instantly, her voice tinged with pleasant surprise. Hello, Ningning. Su Shunning's voice choked up the moment she spoke. Mom, Mrs. Su immediately detected the distress in her voice. Ningning, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Whatever it is, you can tell Mom and Dad, we're here for you. There's nothing we can't get through together. Su Shunning could hold back no longer, tears streaming down her face. A few years ago, the Su family went abroad to expand their business. But she stayed behind in the country for Fu Sihan. Because of Fu Sihan, a distance had grown between her and her parents over the years. Believing her parents resented her, she dared not contact them too often, afraid of upsetting them. In her past life, when her parents learned she had divorced Fu Sihan, they returned to the country without hesitation and stood firmly by her side, even until death. Their only concern was whether she was living well. Su Shunning bit down hard on the back of her hand, forcing herself to calm down. Only when the metallic taste of blood filled her mouth, she whispered softly, no, I just really miss you and Dad. Dad's birthday is in a few days. I'll come back to spend it with you both. After chatting with Mrs. Su for a few more minutes, she hung up the phone and booked a one-way ticket abroad for 7 days later. In 7 days, she would leave this place, the land that had become her grave. She would leave Fu Sihan for good. There would be no turning back. Chapter 2. After buying the ticket, Su Shunning took the prenatal test report out of her bag. This was originally the gift she had prepared for Fu Sihan for their 7th wedding anniversary. Sadly, after disappearing for a whole night, the first thing he said upon returning was to ask for a divorce. In her past life, that child was lost when, in a fit of rage, he kicked her. She was consumed with guilt for failing to protect her child. What she saw by the bridge before she died was the phantom image of a child falling. She desperately rushed over, trying to save that child, and ended up losing her own life. The moment she plunged into the icy river, she didn't struggle, letting herself sink to the bottom. Finding complete release, Su Shunning went straight out to the hospital, heading directly for the psychiatry department. The doctor conducted a series of examinations, his expression turning grave. Miss Su, have you experienced some severe trauma? The results are concerning. Your mental state is not optimistic, and there are signs pointing towards schizophrenia. Just as she thought, while her body had been reborn, the psychological scars would not be so easily erased. For now, at least, she wasn't experiencing any hallucinations. Her nails dug into her palms as Su Shunning's face turned deathly pale. She handed the pregnancy test report to the doctor. I'm pregnant. The doctor glanced at it and sighed. Ms. Su, given your current condition, pregnancy is not advisable. Symptoms like hallucinations and delusions could impair your ability to care for yourself and even pose risks to the fetus's safety. You should begin medication as soon as possible to stabilize your condition first. Her fingers rested on her flat abdomen, and a sharp ache tightened in Su Shunning's chest. I'll give it serious thought. She left the consultation room and walked toward the hospital exit. She hadn't gone far when, passing the gynecology department corridor, she spotted Fu Sihan and Wen Yingying. Wen Yingying was frantically pounding her own flat stomach, sobbing as she struck 70% of the assets, 70%, and 51% of the company shares on top of that. How could you? You worked so hard for all of this, how could you just give it all to her? You said you loved me, you're giving her the money and you say you love me. I don't believe it. Show me the money, show me the love. I'm not having it. I won't have this baby. How are the child and I supposed to live with no money? Rather than bringing a child into this world just to suffer, I'd be better off ending the pregnancy now. Seeing her like this, Fu Sihan was instantly thrown into a panic, his heart aching. He pulled her tightly into his arms. My sweet Yingying. Stop hitting things. If you're angry, hit me instead. Don't hurt yourself or the baby. Don't worry about it. I can always make more money. I agreed to give her that money, not for her sake, but so I could cut all ties cleanly and marry you as soon as possible. It's because you're worth it, do you understand? He looked down at the woman in his arms, his gaze sincere, as if cradling a fragile treasure. Just as Su Shunning was about to leave, she saw Wen Yingying and Fu Sihan's embrace suddenly notice her, her eyes instantly turning vicious. Su Shunning's brow furrowed slightly, a sense of foreboding rising in her heart. when Ying abruptly broke free from Fu Sihan's embrace and snatched 2 empty 4 bottles from a passing nurse's cart. Before Su Shunning could even process what was happening, she saw the woman charging right up to her. The hatred in Wen Ying's eyes was palpable. Who says you need a divorce if you were a widower? You could marry me with a clean slate, couldn't you? Smack. The medicine bottle smashed violently against Su Shunning's head. Blood gushed out as Su Shunning staggered on the spot. Fu Sihan rushed over in a panic. Ning. When Ying grabbed another one and smashed it down with even greater force, trying to steal my husband's money. Go to hell. Su Shunning's vision went black, and she pitched forward completely, losing consciousness. Chapter 3. When Su Shunning came to again, she found herself in a hospital room. Despite the bandages, her head throbbed with a splitting pain. She instinctively reached to touch the injured spot, her hand trembling from the sharp ache. A nurse was changing her dressings and, noticing she was awake, said with sympathy, "You're awake. You have a mild concussion and needed over 40 stitches. The good news is the baby is fine." Only she and the nurse remained in the hospital room. Su Shunning clenched her fists, her voice hoarse as she asked, "Where are Fu Sihan and Wen Ying? Are you talking about the 2 people you had the argument with, after you fainted?" The woman complained of a stomach ache. The man got very worried and quickly carried her off to the gynecology department to get her admitted. Su Shunning was taken aback for a moment. "Then who brought me to the emergency room?" "It was a colleague from our hospital. You'll need to stay for observation for a few more days, and your hospital fees haven't been settled yet. You should contact your family right away to come take care of you and pay the bill." He was so heartless that he watched her get beaten unconscious right in front of him and still refused to call for an ambulance. Her phone suddenly pinged with a notification. Su Shunning picked it up to see a taunting message from Wen Ying. "You're one tough old hag, aren't you? Still not dead after all that. But next time, you won't be so lucky. Fu Sihan is mine. And so is his money. My advice to you is to sign the divorce papers and get lost, or else I won't let you off the hook." Following that string of messages was a picture. Fu Sihan was sitting by Wen Ying's hospital bed, gently peeling a pomegranate for her, his eyes soft and adoring. Su Shunning stared fixedly at Fu Sihan's profile, which seemed to radiate a picture of perfect tranquility. Slowly, she dialed a number. "Hello. I'd like to report a crime. My husband's mistress is trying to kill me for my money." She submitted the hospital surveillance footage of Wen Ying assaulting her, along with the threatening messages, as evidence. In less than 5 minutes, Fu Sihan appeared in her hospital room. When he pushed the door open, his expression was dark, and even the draft of air he brought in felt cold. "You reported Ying for attempted murder." Su Shunning looked at him calmly. "It took over 40 stitches. She tried to kill me. She got what she deserved." Fu Sihan's expression softened slightly as he took in her pallid face and the bandages wrapped around her head. "Ying couldn't accept the terms of our asset division. That's why she lashed out and hurt you in a moment of impulse. She's young, pregnant, and her emotions are all over the place. On top of that, she cut her hand on a glass bottle. She's already been through enough. I apologize on her behalf. Please, don't hold it against her." Su Shunning thought she had finally gotten a handle on her emotions, that she wouldn't let him affect her anymore. Yet, she was still trembling with rage, tears streaming down her face. On the verge of a breakdown, she looked at Fu Sihan. "Fu Sihan, you used to protect me. You used to say you'd make anyone who hurt me pay tenfold. Now, Wen Ying merely scratched her finger while assaulting me, and in your eyes, that counts as her suffering. You can't even bear to make her, the perpetrator, apologize to me face to face. What happened to your promises? What happened to the sincerity you once had? Did you just throw it all away?" Faced with her desperate cries, he felt none of his former tenderness. Instead, he only frowned with impatience. He looked calmly at her tear-streaked face. "Su Shunning, don't play the victim. Your tears mean nothing to me anymore." Su Shunning was stunned. He said calmly, "I was good to you before because I didn't understand love. I mistook our familial bond for romantic affection. It wasn't until I met Ying that I realized how terribly mistaken I had been. Ying is pregnant. There's no way I'm letting her come here to be subjected to your harassment." He tossed the documents he was holding onto the table in front of Su Shunning. The papers fell open, revealing the words "share transfer agreement" printed on them. Fu Sihan's expression was icy cold. "These shares are more than enough to compensate for your injury. You should know when to quit while you're ahead." Su Shunning stared at Fu Sihan's icy expression, and for a moment, she was transported back to her past life. This wasn't the first time when Ying had tried to kill her. She went to the banquet, where she ran into Fu Sihan and Wen Yingying. Wen Yingying was arrogant and unrestrained, boldly declaring that the one who isn't loved is the real homewrecker. Seizing the moment when Su Shunning was off guard, she shoved her into the champagne tower. Su Shunning lost a critical amount of blood and remained unconscious for 3 days in the hospital before finally waking up. When she awoke, Fu Sihan was at her bedside, his eyes bloodshot from exhaustion, showing a rare moment of tenderness. Wen Yingying was nothing but a lowly foot masseuse, vain and vulgar. Yet he had spoiled her rotten, treating her like a little princess. Thinking of Wen Yingying's foolish, impulsive, and materialistic demeanor, Su Shunning calmly asked him, "What on earth do you love about her?" After a moment of contemplation, Fu Sihan then smiled faintly, speaking with great sincerity, "I know she's vain, shallow, spoiled, and greedy. I know she's vulgar, ordinary, and mercenary. Just a second-rate sort of person, but I like her. I like her raw honesty, her fierce ambition, her genuine charm, because I'm no saint either. I'm selfish, cold-blooded, and fickle. We're a perfect match." At that moment, Su Shunning knew she had lost. She hadn't lost to Wen Yingying, but to the Fu Sihan who was lost in his own delusion. She looked at the equity transfer agreement tossed before her and slowly nodded. Fine, in exchange for this agreement, I'll let her off this once. She would use the money he had earned with his own hands to live well for the rest of her life. As for Fu Sihan, let him cling to his second-rate trash and play the part of a second-rate fool. Chapter 4. After Fu Sihan left, Su Shunning immediately called Gu Xiao. The call was answered the moment it went through. Gu Xiao's voice was lazy, laced with a casual, teasing note. "Miss, what brings this sudden call? Is something the matter?" Hearing his familiar, low voice, Su Shunning felt a wave of disorientation wash over her. The Su and Gu families were very close, and they had originally arranged a childhood betrothal between Su Shunning and Gu Xiao. However, Su Shunning was accidentally lost as a child, and upon her return, she was adamant about marrying no one but Fu Sihan, forcing the engagement with Gu Xiao to be called off. Gu Xiao didn't say much, but he would frequently throw a wrench in the works for Fu Sihan when the latter was starting his business. For his part, Fu Sihan was deeply bothered by Gu Xiao's former status as her fiancé, and the two men couldn't stand the sight of each other. The two gradually became sworn enemies. Su Shunning was well aware that the Gu family had deep-rooted influence and that Gu Xiao himself was a business prodigy. He didn't go all out against Fu Sihan, otherwise, Fu would never have succeeded in starting his business. In her past life, Gu Xiao had been abroad for many years and never returned to the country. It wasn't until just before her death that she faintly heard the news of his impending return. Su Shunning collected her thoughts and said calmly, "Are you interested in a 51% stake in Aining Group?" There was a 3-second silence on the other end of the line before Gu Xiao's voice grew noticeably more serious. "Are you and Fu Sihan getting a divorce? Did he do something to you?" Su Shunning tightened her grip on the phone. "Gu Xiao, I'll give you the 51% stake at 70% of the market price. If you can grind Fu Sihan into the dirt, I'll give you an even steeper discount." The moment the words were spoken, Gu Xiao laughed on the other end of the line, a laugh dripping with bloodlust and menace. "Playing the enforcer for you, miss, it would be my absolute pleasure." She spent 3 days in the hospital, and Fu Sihan never once showed up. The only contact was a sinister message from Wen Yingying. "Su Shunning, since you refuse to see reason, don't blame me for being ruthless." Remembering Wen Yingying's fanatical and extreme demeanor, Su Shunning felt a flutter of unease in her chest. Wen Yingying is an uncontrollable mad dog. She contacted the asset disposal manager to sell off all assets under her name as soon as possible. She also contacted a lawyer to rewrite her will. In the event of her accidental death, all her property would be inherited by her parents, with not a single penny going to Fu Sihan. Only after finishing all of this did she feel at ease. There were only 2 days left before she would go abroad to be with her parents. After going out, Su Shunning went to the mall to buy many gifts for her parents before heading home. In the remaining time, she still needed to pack her luggage in advance and then deal with the marital home under her name. She had just stepped out of the car at her doorstep when, suddenly, the headlights of a black car parked not far away blazed to life. The glare was blinding. Su Shunning instinctively shut her eyes and twisted her body away. The next moment, all she heard was the roar of an engine accelerating, like a wild horse broken free from its reins. The black car charged towards her with a furious roar. Su Shunning's eyes widened in terror. No, bang, his body was struck by the front of the car, violently hurled into the air, and then slammed heavily onto the ground. Su Shunning convulsed all over, blood spilling from his mouth. A sharp, cramping pain seized her lower abdomen, and blood gushed out in a steady stream. The car screeched to a halt when Ying stepped out and walked over in her high heels, looking down at her with cold satisfaction at the pitiful sight. Su Shunning stared at her with fierce intensity. Aren't you afraid of going to jail? When Ying covered her mouth with a delicate, tinkling laugh. What do I have to fear? Fu Sihan has my back. Once you're dead, he can sign a letter of forgiveness on your husband's behalf. I won't have to pay any price at all. Su Shunning, I don't have anything against you personally, but you're the one standing in the way of my rise to the top. It's about time I took my turn as Mrs. Fu, as blood pooled beneath her. A fierce hatred blazed in Su Shunning's eyes. Her gaze was locked on Wen Ying with lethal intensity, unforgivable, despair, a torrent of hatred. She had been given a second chance at life, yet she hadn't even had the chance to see her parents one more time. She hadn't made Fu Sihan and Wen Ying pay for what they'd done. Was she really going to die like this? Su Shunning closed her eyes unwillingly, a slow surrender. Just before consciousness slipped away completely, she glimpsed a familiar figure rushing toward her. Chapter 5. When she came to again, the first thing that hit her was the familiar, sharp scent of antiseptic. Su Shunning stared blankly for a moment, then a wave of relief washed over her. She's alive, a familiar voice came from beside her. Fu Sihan turned his bloodshot eyes toward her. Ning, you're finally awake. It seemed he had kept vigil by her side all night. Seeing her awake now, the emotions in his eyes were profound and complex. Su Shunning recalled the figure she saw before losing consciousness and guessed it was he who had brought her to the hospital. Fu Sihan stared at her intently, his voice hoarse as he finally spoke after a long pause. You're pregnant too. Why didn't you tell me? Fu Sihan was an orphan who had yearned for a family of his own and to have children since he was a boy. They had imagined the scene of their child's birth countless times. A boy or a girl would be wonderful. But twins, one of each, would be the best. They had even picked out 2 names, ready and waiting. Sadly, due to a childhood chill that affected her health, Su Shunning had difficulty conceiving and had not been able to get pregnant all these years. By the time she finally conceived their child, he had already fallen for someone else. Su Shunning's gaze fell upon the empty space beside the window. There, another faint, small silhouette appeared, its back turned to her, playing by itself. Su Shunning's long-held back tears began to roll slowly down her cheeks. Even after she had completely lost her child, the hallucination still came. Gazing at the child, she asked Fu Sihan softly, if I tell you, will you leave Wen Ying and come back to me? Fu Sihan's face turned pale, and he fell silent. It was a long moment before Su Shunning finally heard his reply. I'm sorry is such a complicated phrase. It can be a sincere apology, but it can also be a cold, final severance. It was a deeply unsettling feeling, a sour ache that swelled in the chest. In the end, a faint sense of guilt surfaced in Fu Sihan's heart. He took out his phone and made a call, his voice somewhat cold. Bring her in. The bodyguard soon brought Wen Ying into the hospital room. Looking at Su Shunning lying pale on the hospital bed, a hint of smugness flickered in Wen Ying's eyes. She pursed her lips and spoke impatiently to Fu Sihan. Why did you call me here? Wen Ying was uneducated. Relying on her youth and beauty, she acted recklessly, neither understanding nor bothering to conceal her own foolishness and malice. In the past, Fu Sihan would have indulged her, but this time, he thought of the child Su Shunning had lost. His expression turned cold. Apologized to Ning. When Ying's eyes widened instantly in disbelief, and she pointed a trembling finger at herself. Me, you want me to apologize to her? She looked utterly humiliated, her chest heaving with anger. Fu Sihan, I'm carrying your child, and yet you spent the entire night by another woman's side. You promised to treat me well, but you ended up leaving all your assets to her, leaving me to live in poverty. Are you just taking me for a fool? Do you still have feelings for her? Wen Ying had always been skilled at being unreasonable, and Fu Sihan was starting to get a headache from it. His face was grim, but he still managed to explain patiently. Ying. You've really gone too far this time. Ning was critically ill, she almost didn't make it, and she lost the baby. The least you can do is apologize to her. Ever since when Ying entered the hospital room, Su Shunning hadn't said a word, merely watching the two of them calmly. She had nearly lost her life, the baby was gone, and she could feel that several of her ribs were broken, yet Fu Sihan simply brushed it off, asking Wen Ying to apologize, and even that, she refused to do. Seeing Su Shunning's amused, almost theatrical expression only fueled Wen Ying's anger. Her eyes reddened with rage as she lifted her chin and glared at Fu Sihan. It's all her own fault for being so greedy. If she hadn't stolen my money, would I have wanted her dead? I'm not apologizing to her. What are you going to do about it? Fu Sihan's face turned livid with rage. You. He looked at Wen Yingying, who met his gaze with equally stubborn, tear-filled eyes. After a long moment, his resolve finally softened. He turned to Su Shunning with a look of weary apology. He's always been soft-hearted. Once it was for her, and now it's for Wen Yingying. A sardonic smile curled at the corner of Su Shunning's lips. For all his myriad schemes and stratagems, Fu Sihan couldn't for the life of him figure out how to get an ordinary woman to utter a simple "I'm sorry." The truth was, while he had many ways to force her to yield, he simply couldn't bring himself to do it. Seeing Fu Sihan's expression soften into acquiescence, Wen Yingying smiled. She leaned in, gave Fu Sihan a kiss on the lips, and cooed playfully, "Darling, I didn't sleep well last night. I'm heading home first. You handle the rest." "Okay." With that, she shot Su Shunning a triumphant look and swaggered out of the hospital room, having reached the absolute depths of fury and disappointment. Su Shunning's emotions had already settled into a numb calm. Only after watching Wen Yingying leave did Fu Sihan turn his gaze towards her. He saw Su Shunning smiling, her eyes meeting his. It was like looking at a stranger. There was no love left, not even hatred, just a calm, icy emptiness. His heart clenched, and his expression turned awkward and sheepish. "Ningning," Su Shunning said calmly. "Fu Sihan, Wen Yingying killed my child. I want you to use her child's life to pay for my child's." Chapter 6. The guilt vanished from Fu Sihan's face, and his eyes turned icy. He didn't hesitate for a second. "Impossible," Su Shunning said calmly. "Fu Sihan, don't forget, the child she killed was yours too. You have a choice. Offer me the child in Wen Yingying's womb as atonement, securing freedom for you and her for the rest of your lives. Or we fight to the bitter end. Your choice." Fu Sihan could see the deadly seriousness in Su Shunning's eyes. The sheer hatred and madness in those eyes sent a chill down his spine. His fists clenched, his gaze fixed on her with an unyielding intensity. Su Shunning closed her eyes without hesitation. Aining Group was built from the ground up through the shared struggles of her and Fu Sihan. She was no naive pushover. In her past life, she had simply been unable to bring herself to dismantle Fu Sihan's life's work. Clinging to the hope that he would change his ways, this single misstep triggered a cascade of failures, ultimately leading to the ruin of her family and her own demise. If she truly wanted Wen Yingying dead, she had more than enough ways to make it happen. Fu Sihan couldn't afford to take that gamble. The hospital room door slammed shut. Su Shunning slowly opened her eyes to find he was already gone from the room. Su Shunning's gaze drifted back to the window, staring through her tears. Transfixed by that small figure outside, in her past life, she dragged Wen Yingying onto the operating table. In this life, Wen Yingying drove a car and took her child from her. Fair enough. In her past life, Fu Sihan kicked and ended the life of her child. In this life, she will make him personally end the child in Wen Yingying's womb. Now that's what I call fair. Fu Sihan ultimately made his choice. An hour later, Wen Yingying's disbelieving cries and shouts echoed through the hallway. Su Shunning, gritting through the pain, got up and walked to the door to see for herself. Wen Yingying was seized by the bodyguards, struggling desperately. "No, I won't let you. Fu Sihan, have you lost your mind? That's our child. I'm begging you. Don't get rid of it. Please don't hurt him. Fu Sihan, Fu Sihan." Wen Yingying screamed hysterically, like a woman possessed, consumed by despair and fury. The nurse hurriedly administered anesthesia to Wen Yingying. Wen Yingying's body went limp and collapsed to the floor. Fu Sihan rushed to catch her, his eyes reddening as he said, "Yingying, we can have another child." Wen Yingying lowered her head and bit down hard on Fu Sihan's arm, her eyes bloodshot. She screamed, "Fu Sihan, I hate you, I hate you." Wen Yingying was quickly rushed into the operating room. Fu Sihan slumped against the wall, then turned his head to look at Su Shunning standing nearby. Hatred flickered in his eyes. "Are you happy now?" Su Shunning found it utterly absurd. They were the ones who hurt her first. Yet now she was being painted as the villain. Her wound still ached, yet she stood motionless in the doorway. "Who's to say this isn't all just an act?" Fu Sihan's pupils constricted sharply. For a moment, it was as if he didn't recognize her. "I have never lied to you." Su Shunning's tone remained flat and detached. "It didn't stop you from having an affair." Former lovers turned bitter enemies know exactly where to twist the knife to cause the most pain. Neither of them spoke another word. The surgery finally ended, and Wen Yingying was wheeled out of the operating room in a daze. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and her face was deathly pale. Fu Sihan's heart ached for her. He stepped forward to embrace her, but when Ying mustered all her strength and slapped him hard across the face, the blow snapped Fu Sihan's head to the side. But he didn't get angry. Instead, he held her carefully, murmuring apologies as he carried her towards another VIP room, cradled in Su Shuning's arms. When Ying turned her head to look at her, the look in her eyes was one of pure, unadulterated venom. Su Shunning gazed at the faint silhouette in the corridor and said slowly, "I've avenged you, my child." Chapter 7. Su Shunning spent 2 days in the hospital. As soon as she had recovered a little, she was discharged immediately. She had already sold off her former marital home at a low price. She packed her bags and headed straight for the airport. Just as she arrived at the airport parking lot, before she could even get her luggage out, a sudden, sharp pain shot through the back of her head. Before losing consciousness, she saw Wen Ying standing nearby, her gaze icy and terrifying. When she came to again, the first thing she saw was the vast, empty expanse of the sea. The briny sea breeze brushed against her face. Su Shunning looked around and realized, to her shock, that she had been brought onto a ship. The ship sailed across the open sea. She had been hoisted high up against the side of the deck, the vast expanse of the ocean churning beneath her, and dangling from the other end of that very same rope was Wen Ying. Among the men guarding them on the ship at that moment, the leader turned out to be Fu Sihan's former rival. In stark contrast to her panic, Wen Ying remained remarkably composed. Seeing her wake up, Wen Ying revealed a crazed, bloodthirsty smile. "Su Shunning, I know, even after all these years with you, Fu Sihan still can't let you go. I only meant to kill you and be done with it, but I never expected you to be so tenacious, and for you to be the death of my child. This time, I want him to be the one to send you to your grave with his own hands." Su Shunning never imagined that Wen Ying was actually in cahoots with Fu Sihan's business rival. She looked up and saw a speedboat in the distance, chasing after the larger vessel, closing in fast. Fu Sihan appeared quickly, carrying a large suitcase in his hand. Wen Ying immediately began to cry out loudly, "Sihan, save me, please, save me, I'm so scared, woo-woo." Fu Sihan hurriedly tried to comfort her. "Don't be afraid, Ying, I'm here." As Wen Ying struggled, Su Shunning, bound by the same rope, swayed at the other end, yet, she merely lowered her gaze to Fu Sihan. Making no plea for his help, seeing that both were unharmed, he let out a small sigh of relief, then tossed the case in his hand directly onto the boat. His voice was cold and hard. "Let them go." The rival opened the suitcase and, upon seeing the neatly stacked bills, smiled. "Mr. Fu, I'll take the money. As for the people, you'll have to save them yourself." With a knowing smirk, the other person took the money, quickly boarded the small boat alongside the ship, and sped away. Wen Ying immediately began to wail loudly, "I'm scared, save me first, Fu Sihan, help me." Fu Sihan had originally been closer to Su Shunning. He bypassed Su Shunning entirely, heading straight for Wen Ying on the other side of the boat. He grabbed the rope binding Wen Ying and quickly freed her. The moment he let go of the rope and pulled her into a comforting embrace, the rope was immediately yanked by another force, pulling it in a different direction. Realization dawned on Fu Sihan, his face paling as he whipped his head towards Su Shunning's direction. Su Shunning had long known she was not his first choice. From beginning to end, she never uttered a single cry for help, merely watching him with a calm gaze, freed from the counterweight of Wen Ying. Su Shunning was now plummeting downward. A crushing blow seemed to hit Fu Sihan in the chest, draining all color from his face as he cried out, "Ning." He lunged desperately towards Su Shunning's direction. However, Wen Ying grabbed his arm and held him back. "Sihan, my hand hurts so much." Su Shunning, without a moment's hesitation, Fu Sihan shook off Wen Ying's hand and lunged for the end of the rope. However, because of Wen Ying's delay, just a second or two too late, the end of the rope slipped through his grasp. He clenched his fist, but caught only empty air. From start to finish, Su Shunning watched him calmly from a distance, a hint of mockery even flickering in her eyes. With a heavy plunk, she was swallowed whole by the azure sea. "Ning." Su Shunning. Fu Sihan rushed to the railing, his eyes wide with horror as he stared in Su Shunning's direction. He could only watch as Su Shunning, who he knew could swim, sank beneath the waves without any will to fight, surrendering completely to the depths. Without a second thought, Fu Sihan clambered onto the railing, ready to plunge into the sea after her. A figure suddenly pressed against him from behind, Wen Ying clinging to him desperately. "Fu Sihan, she's dead. She was fed to the sharks. You can't jump, you still have me, you can't abandon me." Fu Sihan's eyes were filled with a chilling ferocity as he shoved her away. Get off me. Without a moment's hesitation, he plunged into the sea, a single thought consuming his mind. I can't die, Su Shunning must not die. The moment Su Shunning fell into the sea, she untied the ropes, she swam stealthily towards a small boat not far away. On the yacht, Gu Shao watched her with a heart-wrenching mix of tension and dread. Su Shunning had pushed herself to swim all the way to the small boat, utterly spent, when a large hand seized her arm and hauled her aboard with decisive force. The moment she found her footing on the deck, Gu Shao pulled her into a fierce, crushing embrace. Trembling slightly from fear, the man nearly ground his teeth before sinking them into her shoulder in a desperate, biting kiss. His voice was laced with fear and anger. Su Shunning, you're a complete lunatic. Su Shunning smiled, a resilient smile. She hadn't even seen her parents yet, hadn't had the chance to properly be with them and make up for lost time. How could she possibly die like this? She glanced back toward the direction of the great ship. Fu Sihan was still in the sea, frantically trying to find any trace of her. Su Shunning's gaze was icy cold. Goodbye, Fu Sihan. I hope the next time I see you, you're burning in hell. Chapter 8. Fu Sihan was submerged in the seawater, searching over and over again. When Ying stood on the deck, watching his frantic state, her heart was in a panic, and she was so frightened she could only cry. She cried out desperately, Fu Sihan. Stop looking for her, she's dead. The ocean is so vast, her body could be anywhere by now, or maybe some fish has already eaten it. Please, just stop and come back up. If you keep acting like this, I'm going to get really angry and ignore you. Yet, Fu Sihan seemed not to hear, refusing to give up no matter what. He surfaced again and again for air, only to dive back into the sea to search, but there was nothing. He found nothing at all. A wave of sheer terror seized Fu Sihan. He searched for hours until, utterly exhausted, he collapsed into unconsciousness and was pulled to safety and resuscitated by his subordinates who had just arrived. Fu Sihan was taken to the hospital. He dreamed of the time before he was married to Su Shunning. The Su family did not want Su Shunning to marry him. They intended to give him a sum of money and then cast him out of the household. It was Su Shunning who pulled him down to kneel before her parents. The young woman's back was ramrod straight. Clutching his hand tightly, she addressed her parents. Father, Mother, I love him, I love only him. It's fine if you don't trust Sihan. I do. I'm willing to entrust my life to him, and I believe he will make me happy. If you insist on driving him away, then drive me away as well. Wherever he is in this life, that is where I will be. At that moment, he was kneeling beside Su Shunning. He thought to himself, he loved her so much. He would never let her down, not in this lifetime. Later, Su Shunning stood by him as they started their business venture. After their first business failed, he was left with only a few $100s to his name. To save money, they lived in a tiny, 20-square-meter rental. That old house grew bitterly cold every winter. The windows didn't shut properly, letting in a constant draft. Huddled under a thin quilt, they clung to each other for warmth. Crushed, he hesitated before saying to her, Ning Ning, maybe I'll never be able to make you happy in this lifetime. Maybe your parents were right all along. I'm useless. I can't make money. I can't give you a better life. Su Shunning nestled in his embrace, reaching up to cradle his face in her hands. Her fingers were cool to the touch, yet her gaze burned with a warmth that held only him. She said, Silly Fu Sihan, who said you couldn't make me happy? I'm perfectly happy right now. She never once complained about their hardships. Always following him with a smile, she was there for him, offering companionship, encouragement, and help, doing everything she could to walk forward by his side. But somehow, as they walked on, they drifted apart. In her dreams, those once gentle and happy eyes gradually held nothing but tears and resentment. The hand that had always held his so tightly now slowly released its grip. No, don't go, please don't go. Fu Sihan shook his head desperately, reaching out to grab her. But he was only in time to see her figure sink beneath the waves. His eyes snapped open, and he let out a hoarse, ragged shout. Ning Ning. He jolted upright in terror, his eyes taking in the unfamiliar furnishings of the room, the sharp scent of antiseptic hitting his nostrils. It finally dawned on him, he was in a hospital, when Ying Ying's excited voice came from beside him. You're awake. But soon, her voice took on a plaintive, resentful tone. Even in your dreams, you're still thinking of Su Shunning. Humph, whatever, she's dead anyway. I can't be bothered to argue with a ghost. Seated on the hospital bed, Fu Sihan's gaze turned sharp. Without a moment's hesitation, he backhanded a slap across Wen Yingying's face. Shut up, Ning Ning isn't dead. A sharp slap rang out. When Ying was struck and fell to the ground, clutching her face, she stared at Fu Sihan in disbelief. "You hit me." Her voice shot up sharply. "Fu Sihan, how dare you hit me?" She struggled to her feet and lunged at him, but the moment she drew near, Fu Sihan reached out and seized her by the throat. His eyes were bloodshot, his gaze utterly deranged. When he looked at Wen Ying, all the love from the past had vanished from his eyes, leaving only a world-destroying madness. "Wen Ying. You knew perfectly well that rope bound the two of you together. If I save you first, she'll fall from the other end. If you had just reminded me not to let go of the rope, Ning wouldn't have fallen into the sea. Why didn't you remind me?" Why? Chapter 9. When Ying was being choked so hard she couldn't catch her breath, her sharp nails clawed at his arm, but she couldn't budge him an inch. Tears welled in the corners of Wen Ying's eyes. She stared fixedly at Fu Sihan and said with great difficulty, "Remind you? I wish she were dead. She's the one who stole what was mine, and you're the one who still can't forget her. Fu Sihan, go ahead and strangle me if you dare. Even if you kill me, Su Shunning won't come back. You're the one who killed her with your own hands. It was you. Ha ha ha." Fu Sihan's pupils contracted sharply, and with a violent jerk of his hand, he sent Wen Ying sprawling to the floor. His voice was icy and menacing. "Get out." Wen Ying clutched her throat, coughing softly a few times. Though she was frightened by Fu Sihan's current state, the mere thought of Su Shunning's death filled her with nothing but grim satisfaction. She knew that Fu Sihan was just struggling to come to terms with Su Shunning's death for the moment, but it was her he loved now. Sooner or later, he would come crawling back to her. She rose to her feet and addressed Fu Sihan. "I'll wait for you to calm down and apologize to me. If you don't make it up to me properly this time, I won't forgive you so easily." With that, she held her head high and walked out of the hospital room in her high heels. Fu Sihan sat motionless on the hospital bed, staring blankly at his own hands. Wen Ying was right. He was the one who got Su Shunning killed. He was so close back then. If only he had grabbed that rope, Su Shunning would still be alive. She would still be here. Wen Ying had provoked and hurt Su Shunning several times, but he simply dismissed it as her being in a bad mood, letting her vent her frustrations. Even though he was divorcing Su Shunning, he had never wished for her death. He couldn't accept it. He simply couldn't bear the thought of her passing. The past tenderness he thought he no longer cared for was like a potent poison buried deep in his bones. With Su Shunning's plunge into the sea, it surged through every strand of his memory, lying in wait to torment him. The realization finally dawned on him, long after it should have. It wasn't that he didn't love her. He loved her. He still loved her. Fu Sihan buried his face in his hands and let out a roar, like a trapped beast. "Ah, Ning." He checked out of the hospital immediately and assembled the most professional salvage team. The salvage team worked around the clock, day and night, searching the area where Su Shunning had fallen into the sea, but for a full 2 weeks. They recovered nothing except the rope that had been used to bind Su Shunning. Not even a single scrap of Su Shunning's clothing was found. Fu Sihan also kept vigil by that stretch of sea every day, diving with the salvage team. He didn't know what outcome he was hoping for. He was just gripped by a desperate, almost manic need to find some kind of answer. He couldn't accept that Su Shunning was dead. He was terrified of actually seeing her body, yet equally afraid of finding nothing at all. He passed out during another dive and was rushed back to the hospital for emergency treatment. His assistant hurried over, carrying a large stack of documents. There, lying on the hospital bed, was Fu Sihan. In just half a month, he had wasted away to a shadow of his former self, looking utterly spiritless. The assistant let out a silent sigh and murmured, "If only I had known it would come to this. I would have acted differently back then." He had been by Fu Sihan's side for years, witnessing firsthand how Fu Sihan climbed his way up from the very bottom. He was Fu Sihan's most trusted subordinate and also a witness to the love between Fu Sihan and Su Shunning. For someone as cold and detached as Fu Sihan, his love for Su Shunning was profound. He loved her so much that whenever he saw something delicious or fun, even if he didn't like it himself, he'd want to bring it home for Su Shunning to try. He loved her so much that he named his company the AI Ning Group. And he put all his major assets and real estate entirely in Su Shunning's name. He loved her without any limits, even if it was just a flicker of impatience in Su Shunning's eyes. He would do everything he could to figure out what was upsetting her. But hearts are fickle. Who could have imagined that a man like Fu Sihan would suddenly fall for a foot-washing girl, leaning against the headboard? Fu Sihan gave a light cough before reaching out to take the documents from his assistant. He flipped through the pages as he signed them. Is there anything else? The assistant replied with a hint of resignation. Mr. Fu, you can't afford to waste any more time here. The company needs you. We've discovered that before her disappearance, Ms. Su transferred all of her shares to the Gu Group. Now, people from the Gu Group have joined the board and are aggressively interfering in all company affairs. If you don't return soon, the company will change hands. Chapter 10. Fu Sihan was taken aback, his expression instantly darkening. Gu Xiao, the assistant nodded. We've confirmed that Gu Xiao, who had been developing his career overseas, returned to the country recently and took over the group shares previously held by Miss Su. The assets under Miss Su's name are also being liquidated by his people. Fu Sihan clenched his fist, his eyes bloodshot, his tone thick with unmistakable jealousy. Ningning chose him. Fu Sihan stared intently at the documents. A nagging sense that something was off gnawing at him, yet he couldn't quite piece his thoughts together. The assistant was at a loss for how to console him. After all, Fu Sihan was the one who betrayed her first. His jealousy now was coming far too late. Seeing Fu Sihan's livid expression, the assistant hesitated for a few seconds before finally pulling another file from the stack and handing it to him. Mr. Fu, the item you requested has been retrieved. A heavy feeling settled in Fu Sihan's chest as he snatched the document pouch. Feeling the marks inside, the color instantly drained from his face. With trembling hands, Fu Sihan pulled out the contents. 2 crimson booklets fell into his hands, bearing only 3 stark characters. Divorce certificate. Fu Sihan's pupils constricted violently, a suffocating tightness gripping his chest. At that very moment, the hospital room door swung open, revealing Wen Yingying in the doorway, still nursing her pride after Fu Sihan had slapped her last time. She had left in a huff and had been waiting for him to come and make amends. Little did she know, half a month had passed with no word from Fu Sihan. He remained at sea every day, searching for Su Shuning's body. Upon hearing that Fu Sihan was back in the hospital, she couldn't sit still any longer, terrified that given enough time, some other woman would snatch him away. Using a visit as her excuse, she rushed over to see him. To her utter shock, the first thing she saw upon arrival was the divorce papers. When Yingying's face lit up with ecstasy, she rushed over and snatched the divorce certificate right out of Fu Sihan's hand. The divorce certificate. You're already divorced. Perfect. I finally have the divorce certificate. Now I can marry you and become Mrs. Fu. She turned and threw herself into Fu Sihan's arms, wrapping her arms around his neck before leaning in to plant a kiss on his lips. Sihan, I knew I was in your heart all along, so that's why you've been gone so long. You were preparing a surprise for me. Fu Sihan's eyes narrowed slightly, after arranging for the termination of Wen Yingying's pregnancy. He had indeed instructed his people to expedite the divorce proceedings. He wanted to get the divorce papers finalized quickly so he could marry Wen Yingying, hoping it would give her a sense of security and stop her from constantly targeting Su Shuning. Little did he expect that before the divorce could even be finalized, Su Shuning would be murdered, and he completely lost any desire to marry Wen Yingying. The perfume Wen Yingying wore was far too cloying and overpowering for his taste. He raised his hand abruptly and shoved Wen Yingying away with utter disgust. He snatched the divorce certificate from Wen Yingying's hand and, without even a glance, tore it to shreds. Wen Yingying stared at the fragments on the floor and let out a piercing scream. Fu Sihan, what are you doing? Have you lost your mind? She lunged forward, snatched the divorce papers off the floor, and glared furiously at Fu Sihan. Even if you tear those divorce papers to shreds, it won't change the fact that you and Su Shuning are divorced, and it certainly won't change the fact that from now on, I'm the only one by your side. A mocking smile played on Fu Sihan's lips as he looked at Wen Yingying, his gaze as cold as ice. His tone was utterly domineering and overbearing. Even if we're divorced, she will always be my wife, and you. Fu Sihan got straight out of bed and walked step by step towards Wen Yingying. His gaze was ice cold, filling Wen Yingying with panic and causing her to stumble back several steps in fear. Chapter 11. Fu Sihan said with an expressionless face, I was busy looking for Ningning and hadn't gotten around to dealing with you yet. I never expected you to come knocking on my door yourself. Wen Yingying, I told you long ago to behave yourself. I'll give you everything that's rightfully yours. But why are you always so greedy? Why must you always resort to such unscrupulous means? Wen Yingying's voice trembled as she looked at him, instinctively backing away step by step, yet he still cornered her against the wall. She stared at him in terror, putting on a brave face as she said, Fu Sihan, I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean? Fu Sihan suddenly reached out and grabbed Wen Yingying's hair, when Ying was forced to tilt her head back, looking at him in fear. Fu Sihan, you're hurting me. Fu Sihan paid no heed, instead letting out a derisive snort. When Ying, did you really think that by teaming up with my competitor, I wouldn't find out you were involved in that kidnapping? I warned you not to touch Ning. Time and again, you keep pushing my limits. Since you'll never learn your lesson, then prepare to face my wrath. With that, he flung Wen Ying to the ground. He then ordered his assistant, throw her into the sea. Let her get a taste of what it's like to be soaked in seawater. Don't let her die so easily. I want her to suffer, day after day, as penance for Ning. Wen Ying's pupils contracted sharply as she stared at him in disbelief. Fu Sihan, no, you can't do this to me. Fu Sihan waved a dismissive hand, his patience clearly gone. 2 bodyguards appeared, seized Wen Ying, and began dragging her out of the hospital room. Wen Ying struggled desperately, her voice hoarse from screaming. Fu Sihan, how could you do this to me? Didn't you say you fell in love with me? You love me. How could you hurt me for Su Shuning's sake? Fu Sihan was stunned into silence for a moment. Loving you. I once thought that was love, but I realize now, the one I've loved from the very beginning, has only ever been Ning. His feelings for Wen Ying were nothing more than a fleeting passion. The very genuineness and charm that once drew him in had now become utterly repulsive to him. The traits he once found familiar and similar to his own now filled him with profound disgust and annoyance. Indeed, he loathed even himself, so how could he not despise Wen Ying, who mirrored him? Wen Ying felt as if the sky had fallen upon hearing his words. She screamed, her eyes blazing with fury. No, you're lying to me, Fu Sihan, you're lying. I've fallen for you. I fell for you long ago. Why else would I be acting so insane? How could you just stop loving me, just like that? How could you? Fu Sihan seemed not to hear. In his daze, what he recalled was the look in Su Shuning's eyes as she fell into the sea. Those eyes were so sharp, tinged with faint mockery, as if they could see right through him. Fu Sihan murmured in agony, his voice trembling. Ning, did you see right through me from the start? Did you always know that I would come to regret this? He only found out when he returned home a couple of days ago. Even the house they got married in had been sold off by Su Shuning at a rock-bottom price. All the things they had once picked out and bought together had long since been tossed in the trash, utterly destroyed. The house now held not a single trace of the life they had shared. Even though it was nothing but an empty shell, Fu Sihan still paid a fortune to buy the house back. He regretted it. He truly, deeply regretted it, yet she left him with nothing, not even her body. 6 months later, Fu Sihan worked in his office, his face an expressionless mask. The Fu Group was facing an unprecedented crisis. The board's dissatisfaction with him grew daily, while the Gu family applied relentless and brazen pressure. Fu Sihan lit a cigarette. Amidst the swirling smoke, his expression was weary and vacant, lost in thought. In the past, he had clawed his way up the ladder with everything he had, all for the sake of giving Su Shuning a good life. But now that Su Shuning had left him, he no longer saw any point in working so hard to make money. The only thing left he felt compelled to hold on to was the very name Aining Group. This was the only thing he could hold on to. The office door was suddenly knocked on, and his assistant rushed in without waiting for a response. In a rare moment of composure lost, he exclaimed, Mr. Fu, look, isn't this Madam? Fu Sihan was taken aback and hastily took the photo from his assistant's hand. This is a candid photo. The person in the photo is Gu Xiao, the ruthless titan of the business world, known for his decisive and merciless tactics, is now gazing down tenderly as he gently tucks a stray strand of hair behind a woman's temple. Cradled in his arm, the woman looks up at him, a faint smile playing at the corner of her lips. That face had appeared in his dreams countless times. It was Su Shuning, the one he had been longing for day and night. Gu Xiao's eyes instantly turned bloodshot. For the past 6 months, there wasn't a single day he hadn't spent trying every possible means to find Su Shuning. When he couldn't find her in the sea, he searched for her all over the world. He refused to believe, refused to accept that she was gone, vanished without a trace. She's not dead, she can't be. Fu Sihan's voice trembled as he grabbed his assistant by the arm. Find her. I need to see her. I'm bringing her home. Chapter 12, Abroad. In a therapist's office, Su Shuning leaned back in the therapy chair and slowly opened her eyes. Not far away, a small figure waved at her, seeming to say, Bye, Mom. Then, skipping away, her little form dissolved into the wind. She stood motionless for a long time, her gaze fixed on the direction where her child had vanished, tears streaming down her face like rain. After a full 6 months of treatment, her child was gone for good. Su Shunning felt a pang of reluctance and heartache, yet also a sense of release. In the end, she finally let go of this regret that had spanned 2 lifetimes. She knew all too well that if she clung to her obsession, her illness would never be cured. If she repeated the ending of her past life, who would her parents have to rely on for the rest of theirs? Still, a faint sense of loss lingered in my heart. From beside me came the doctor's gentle voice. Here, wipe your tears, thank you. Su Shunning's voice was hoarse from crying. It had been a long time since she had last cried in front of her therapist. 6 months ago, she and Gu Xiao left the country together to be with her parents. Su Shunning didn't want to worry her parents, so she kept what happened between her and Fu Sihan to herself. They simply said that Fu Sihan had changed his heart, which was why they got divorced. Little did they know, back then, she had merely made a phone call saying she missed them. Her parents then secretly looked into her affairs back home and were absolutely furious with Fu Sihan. For the past 6 months, the Su and Gu families have joined forces, relentlessly pursuing Fu Sihan. Climbing up from the bottom was a grueling, step-by-step struggle, yet in just half a year, he was about to be kicked right back to where he started. Fu Sihan couldn't possibly accept that. However, he didn't target the Su family. Instead, he went head-to-head with the Gu family. Adopting a scorched earth, mutually assured destruction approach, what he didn't know was that behind both the Su and Gu families, the one truly orchestrating his downfall was none other than Su Shunning. Back then, she proposed selling her shares to Gu Xiao at a low price. Gu Xiao, however, countered that he could help, but the revenge, she had to carry it out herself. Su Shunning understood that Gu Xiao didn't want Fu Sihan to become a lingering obsession for her. He wanted her to personally close that chapter of her past. Now, the Gu and Fu corporations are locked in a fierce battle, with both sides gradually reaching a stalemate. Su Shunning was indeed gradually moving on from the past. Su Shunning stepped out of the consultation room and locked eyes with Gu Xiao, who had been waiting outside all along. As usual, the man strode forward and took her slightly cold hand. Are you all right? Su Shunning looked up at him. Born into a wealthy and powerful family and long accustomed to a position of authority, Gu Xiao had a cold, fierce look in his eyes that naturally commanded an imposing presence. Yet, whenever his gaze fell upon her, it held nothing but concern and tenderness. A month ago, Gu Xiao had been injured while protecting her and had nearly not made it through the emergency treatment. It was then that Su Shunning finally relented and agreed to be his girlfriend, and now, with her hands enveloped in the man's large grasp, Su Shunning whispered softly, Gu Xiao, let's get married. The man, always so composed and steady, simply stared at her in a daze, momentarily at a loss for a reaction. Su Shunning let out a soft laugh and reached out to poke his cheek. No matter how cold someone looks, their cheeks are always soft. Su Shunning's eyes crinkled into crescents. You don't want to. Gu Xiao snapped back to reality at once, gripping her hand tightly, his voice trembling. Su Shunning, you were the one who said it first. I've waited all these years for this moment. I will never let you go. Not in this lifetime. You can't take it back. Su Shunning shook her head with a smile and led him outside. I won't take it back. Gu Xiao's heart skipped a beat. He bent down and swept her up into his arms. His eyes were rimmed with red, and he couldn't help but press on, anxious yet curious. Why? Su Shunning let him carry her out, leaning into his embrace. Her arms looped around his neck. Because I had a dream, a beautiful dream. Gu Xiao raised an eyebrow. That's simple. I hope I was in it. Or, did you dream about our happy future together? Su Shunning let out a soft laugh, but a flicker of sadness passed through her eyes. She nodded. Yes, I was very happy. Just a moment ago, she had dreamt of her past life. In that past life, it was only after her death that Gu Xiao hurried back from abroad. The man, always so composed and dignified, threw himself before her grave like a madman. In a mad frenzy, he unearthed her coffin, gazing upon her body lying within, already mottled with the signs of death. With tears streaming down his face, he held her tightly in his arms and pressed a careful, tender kiss to her lips. Later, with his own hands, he brought the Fu Empire to ruin, driving Fu Sihan to the brink of utter destitution. In the end, holding her, he plunged the dagger into his own heart, to rest with her in a shared grave. Had she not gotten lost and fallen for Fu Sihan, she would have been his wife long ago. Su Shunning thought that in this life, she should not fail him again. Holding each other, they arrived at the hospital entrance. Gu Xiao's steps suddenly halted, and the arms holding Su Shunning grew tense. Su Shunning turned her head to follow her gaze and immediately spotted the man standing not far away. It was Fu Sihan, Chapter 13, Ningning. Thank goodness, you're alive. Fu Sihan's voice trembled as he took step after step towards Su Shunning. His eyes were fixed solely on her, those bloodshot orbs glistening with unshed tears. Su Shunning wasn't dead, she had been hiding abroad. His search for her over the past 6 months had been so public and tumultuous, he refused to believe she was unaware, yet, from start to finish, she never intended to let him know she was alive. Making the past 6 months a complete farce for him, but now, seeing her alive and well, Fu Sihan felt not a trace of anger, only overwhelming relief. Thank goodness she was still alive. Fu Sihan's voice choked with emotion. Ningning, I've missed you so much. Su Shunning gave Gu Zhao's shoulder a pat, and only then did he gently set her down. Su Shunning sized up Fu Sihan. She had, in fact, heard the news from back home. The salvage team hired by Fu Sihan searched the seas for a full 3 months. In the end, it was the Fu Group's shareholders who couldn't stand it any longer. They kept pressuring Fu Sihan until he was forced to give up. However, even after calling off the search at sea, Fu Sihan continued to send people to look for her all over the world, even when Ying, the woman he called his true love, was tormented by him for a month until she had a mental breakdown. He then had her locked away in a psychiatric hospital. In the 6 months he believed her to be dead. Fu Sihan clearly hadn't been doing well. His handsome face was gaunt, making his entire demeanor appear even more cold and ruthless. His hair was unkempt, as if it hadn't been properly cared for. Even the clothes on his body hung loosely. He was doing poorly, and she felt absolutely wonderful about it. Su Shunning folded her arms and gave him a lazy glance. Sorry to disappoint you, Mr. Fu, but I'm alive and well. She shot Gu Xiao a look and turned to leave, the moment she stirred. Fu Sihan rushed over and blocked her path. He didn't even glance at Gu Xiao, his gaze fixed longingly on Su Shunning, his voice strained. Ningning, I came to see you. Can you spare me a few minutes? We need to talk. Su Shunning stood on the hospital steps, looking down at him. There was a hint of desperation in Fu Sihan's gaze as he looked at her. It was the exact expression that used to soften her heart in the past. Yet at this moment, Su Shunning merely let out a soft, derisive scoff. Fu Sihan. A good ex-husband should act like he's dead after a divorce. Don't just show up and bother me. There's nothing left for us to talk about. If you're here to deliver the divorce papers, then I suppose I can say thank you. She linked her arm with Gu Zhao's and walked away without a backward glance. The words, divorce papers, pierced Fu Sihan's heart like a shard of glass. A pained expression crossed Fu Sihan's face as he hurried after her. Ningning. I was acting on impulse back then. I never wanted a divorce. Su Shunning let out a laugh, her gaze towards him dripping with utter derision. Memories of her past life flooded her mind. In that past life, no matter how desperately she pleaded or what lengths she went to, he never once looked back. He even went so far as to drive her parents to their deaths for Wen Yingying's sake, ultimately pushing her to her own demise in the river. In this life, he's come to his senses already, so soon. How utterly ridiculous. It's beyond absurd. She watched him with a cold gaze, her tone icy. Fu Sihan, you're telling me now that you don't want a divorce. Back then, to divorce me and marry your true love, you were willing to give up the better part of your fortune. It's utterly laughable for you to say you don't want a divorce now. What a pity. The arrow, once shot, cannot be recalled. You got your wish once. Do you really think you can have your way every single time? Greed like yours never ends well. Su Shunning's tone turned icy, and the look she cast at Fu Sihan was filled with a cold, seething hatred. Fu Sihan was stunned, frozen in place for a moment. Where did that overwhelming, resolute hatred in Su Shunning's eyes come from? Meanwhile, Gu Xiao had already fixed a fierce glare on him and beckoned with a wave. 2 bodyguards immediately rushed over, placing themselves directly in front of Fu Sihan, cutting off his path. Forced to halt. Fu Sihan could only watch as Su Shunning got into the car with Gu Xiao. With the car window halfway down, he saw clearly that after Su Shunning got in the car, she seemed somewhat weary and was drawn into Gu Xiao's embrace. Gu Xiao lowered his head and planted a kiss on Su Shunning's smooth forehead. She didn't resist in the slightest, leaning naturally into his arms and closing her eyes in feigned sleep. This effortless, intimate display drove Fu Sihan wild with jealousy. His fists clenched involuntarily, his gaze fixed unwaveringly on the car until it vanished completely from sight. His assistant, who had accompanied him, looked at him with concern. Mr. Fu, what should we do about this? Fu Sihan stared coldly at the hospital before turning to issue instructions to his assistant. It seems, Ningning harbors an extraordinary hatred for me. Her eyelids were red and swollen just now. As if she'd been crying, "Go and find out if something is wrong with her." They checked into the hotel. In less than half an hour, the assistant hurried into the room with a document in hand. Fu Sihan took it, opened it, and the color instantly drained from his face as he read the diagnosis: schizophrenia, Chapter 14. He could hardly wait to check the medical records. When he saw that the onset was triggered by a major trauma, his mind went blank with a thunderous shock. It felt as if someone had taken a hammer and smashed it hard against his chest, in an instant. It shattered his heart into a million pieces. Those few thin sheets of paper felt as heavy as 1,000 pounds. Fu Sihan's hands trembled. "It's because of me. Ningning is like this because of me." 1,000 words choked in his throat. Fu Sihan clutched his chest and suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. The assistant was startled and cried out in alarm, "President Fu." Fu Sihan's vision went black, and he fainted on the spot. His assistant rushed him to the hospital in a panic. The doctors immediately performed emergency examinations and treatment. Even while unconscious, Fu Sihan kept murmuring Su Shuning's name. Only after confirming Fu Sihan was out of life-threatening danger did the assistant hurry off to find Su Shuning. Su Shuning had already returned to the Su family home. Coincidentally, her parents had gone on a trip, and before leaving, they had asked Gu Xiao to look after her at home. So, on the very day her parents departed, Gu Xiao arrived at the house with his suitcase in hand. Once the two of them were inside, Gu Xiao headed straight for the kitchen to get busy preparing dinner. Su Shuning had intended to help him, but he shooed her out of the kitchen and instead pressed a plate of fruit into her hands. Leaning against the doorframe, she ate strawberries while watching his busy figure. This kind of life was actually quite nice. It was a shame that the sudden ringing of the doorbell shattered their peaceful, beautiful moment. Su Shuning and Gu Xiao exchanged a glance before she turned to answer the door. Upon seeing the familiar face of Fu Sihan's assistant at the door, Su Shuning raised an eyebrow, her expression remaining cool and detached. "What is it?" Taken aback by her frosty demeanor, Fu Sihan's assistant stiffened slightly but still managed to say, "Madam, Mr. Fu." Su Shuning raised her hand directly, cutting him off. "Fu Sihan and I are already divorced." The assistant sighed and changed his wording. "Miss Su, for the 6 months you were missing, Mr. Fu believed you were dead. He's been consumed by regret and self-blame, tormenting himself for not being able to save you. He's come to realize the truth. He never truly loved Wen Yingying. It's always been you. He just got sidetracked, chasing a fleeting novelty, and lost his way. Mr. Fu has been drowning his sorrows in alcohol for the past half year. His health has deteriorated badly, which is why the shock caused him to collapse. He suddenly coughed up blood and lost consciousness. I rushed him to the hospital for emergency treatment. Even while unconscious, he kept calling your name. Could you go to the hospital to see him?" Su Shuning shook her head calmly, almost without hesitation. "No." The assistant was momentarily at a loss for words. "Miss Su, Fu Sihan and I are divorced. Whether he lives or dies is no longer any concern of mine." Su Shuning didn't give him another chance to speak. Shutting the door in his face, the assistant stared at the closed door, and thinking of Fu Sihan's current state, could only feel a wave of helplessness. He had no choice but to rush back to the hospital. Fu Sihan had already woken up. Seeing him hurry in, he asked in a slightly hoarse voice, "You look like you're in a hurry. Where have you been?" The assistant hesitated, but finally said, "It's nothing. I just went to get you some congee. The doctor said you've been drinking too much and not eating, which has left your body depleted. That's why you suddenly coughed up blood and lost consciousness." Fu Sihan was taken aback for a moment. Looking at his assistant's expression, he suddenly had an inkling of what had happened. "Did you go to Ningning?" He instinctively glanced behind his assistant, but his eyes soon clouded with a hint of disappointment, and he gave a self-mocking smile. Those once profound eyes now held nothing but shattered fragments. "She still hates me. Why on earth would she come with you to see me?" The assistant offered words of comfort. "Mr. Fu, please don't distress yourself too much. At least now we know Madam is alive, and we've even seen her. She might still be giving you the cold shoulder, but you two share a bond that goes all the way back to childhood. She loved you so much before. If you give her a sincere apology, I'm sure her heart will soften and she'll forgive you." Fu Sihan recalled the beautiful moments he shared with Su Shuning, but he also remembered the icy, detached look in her eyes just before she fell into the sea. It was rare for him to feel so uncertain. "Do you really think she could ever forgive me?" The more Fu Sihan thought about it, the more anxious he felt. He couldn't sit still for another second and insisted on getting up and leaving the hospital room. "I have to go see her." Chapter 15, The Sioux Residence. After Gu Xiao finished cooking and they both ate, he went to do the dishes. Su Shunning was curled up on the sofa, leafing through company documents. Gu Xiao came over and settled down beside her. Su Shunning handed him the file she was holding and began discussing company matters. But as he spoke, Gu Xiao's mind began to wander. And he would occasionally ask, Ningning, are you really willing to marry me? Su Shunning nodded calmly. The normally calm and collected man broke into a foolish grin before resuming their discussion. A few more minutes passed. Ningning, are you really willing to marry me? Su Shunning rolled her eyes. Yes, I truly do. Gu Xiao simply leaned down, wrapping an arm around her waist, the corners of his mouth curling upward uncontrollably. He asked her 6 or 7 times in a row. Su Shunning finally lost her patience and glared at him coldly. Gu Xiao, I do, I mean it, truly, from the bottom of my heart, I want this. Why? Because I like you too. Is that answer good enough for you? If you keep asking, I might start to wonder if I'm being too impulsive. MPH. Before Su Shunning could finish her sentence, Gu Xiao suddenly leaned down and silenced her with a kiss. When Fu Sihan hurriedly arrived at the Sioux residence, the scene that greeted him was one of near-perfect beauty. Su Shunning leaned into Gu Xiao's embrace, her slender waist held by him, their lips locked in a tender kiss. Gu Xiao's movements were careful and restrained, each kiss he placed on Su Shunning's lips, the bridge of her nose, and her forehead was filled with tenderness and affection. Su Shunning was utterly lost in the moment. No, Su Shunning is his, she can only be his, no one else can touch her. The sight was like a knife scraping across his eyes. Fu Sihan's pain was so intense his eyes turned bloodshot. And he viciously kicked the front door. Ningning, with a loud bang, the already unlatched door was kicked open. Su Shunning was startled and instinctively shrank back into Gu Xiao's arms. Gu Xiao held her tightly, patting her back in a soothing gesture. Meanwhile, Fu Sihan had already burst in and said coldly to Gu Xiao, let her go. Gu Xiao ignored him, only holding her even tighter. A smirk played on his lips, his tone arrogant and unrestrained. I'm holding my own fiancé. What business is it of yours, President Fu? Gu Xiao's pupils constricted sharply as he stared at Su Shunning in disbelief. You're going to marry her? No, I won't allow it. You can't. He rushed forward, reaching out to pull Su Shunning away from Gu Xiao's embrace, but just as his hand extended, he saw Su Shunning raise her own hand without a moment's hesitation. Slap, the sharp, crisp sound instantly shattered Fu Sihan's motion. The searing pain in his cheek froze him in place. Fu Sihan stared blankly at Su Shunning, meeting only the frost in her eyes. Su Shunning looked at him with utter disgust. Fu Sihan, what gives you the right to say no? You said you found your true love, you wanted a divorce, and I agreed, when Ying kept provoking me, trying to take my life, and you kept defending her. Now that I'm with someone else, you suddenly pop up saying you regret it, saying you won't allow it. Who the hell do you think you are? What gives you the right to not allow it? Under the relentless barrage of Su Shunning's accusations, Fu Sihan staggered, his body swaying before he sank down slowly, his knees hitting the floor with a heavy thud right in front of her. He gazed up at her, his face a mask of anguish. Ningning, I know it's all my fault, I promised you happiness, but I lost my way amidst the growing glamour and took a wrong turn, when Ying was just a fleeting fascination. You have no idea what I've sacrificed, the things I was forced to do to climb to this position. When I'm with you, I always feel you're too good for me. Only someone as vain and tainted as when Ying is on my level. It was my fault. It wasn't until I saw you fall into the sea before my eyes that I finally realized the truth. The only person I've ever loved, from start to finish, is you. Fu Sihan's body trembled faintly. We grew up together. I don't know when my feelings for you began. For a time, I even mistook them for familial love, but I know that's not it. I love you. I can't bear the thought of anyone else having you. Ningning, we've weathered so many storms together, you used to love me so much, please. I'm begging you, just look at me one more time, can you find it in your heart to forgive me, just this once? Su Shunning never imagined she would see Fu Sihan brought so low. He was brooding and stubborn, yet possessed an unyielding pride of his own, and now, he was kneeling at her feet, begging for her forgiveness like a dog. Su Shunning looked down at him, but what she saw was the cold, ruthless man from her past life and the one now groveling before her, the two faces flickering and overlapping. For 10 years in that past life, a full decade, he had never once shown a shred of remorse. When he had driven her parents to the brink, she too had once knelt before him, pleading with a voice raw from screaming, begging him to spare them for the sake of their past affection. but he said her parents had hurt Wen Yingying, so, damn them, with so many lives lost and such a sea of blood and hatred between us. How can there be any talk of forgiveness? Su Shunning laughed, tears streaming down her face. She enunciated each word with cold clarity. No, Fu Sihan, a man like you deserves to be unloved, unaccompanied, and unpitied, destined to die alone. I, Su Shunning, will never forgive you in this lifetime. Get out. Chapter 16. With that, she snapped at the bodyguard by the door. What are you waiting for? Get him out of here. The bodyguard immediately stepped forward, seized Fu Sihan, and began dragging him out. Fu Sihan seemed to have all the strength drained from his body. Standing there dumbstruck as he stared in Su Shunning's direction, Su Shunning swayed as if about to collapse, and would have fallen to the ground had Gu Xiao not caught her in time. Without so much as another glance at Fu Sihan, she clung tightly to Gu Xiao and burst into heart-wrenching sobs. Her cries were filled with boundless sorrow, grievance, and despair. Fu Sihan was thrown out the door. He slumped against the wall and slid down to the floor. He listened numbly to Su Shunning's sobs. Unable to understand why was this happening? Why did Su Shunning hate him so much? Fu Sihan stayed outside the door the entire night, never leaving. By the time his assistant, having searched everywhere, finally tracked him down, Fu Sihan was already lying unconscious with a high fever at the doorway. The assistant, his face drained of color from fright, rushed him back to the hospital. Fu Sihan fell into a deep coma and began to dream. In the dream, things were different from this life. After he filed for divorce for Wen Yingying's sake, Su Shunning didn't agree. Instead, she tore the divorce papers to shreds right then and there. Later, she tried everything in her power to make him stay. She went out of her way to learn how to cook his favorite dishes, but she waited all night, and he never showed up. When Wen Yingying deliberately provoked her and pushed her into the champagne tower, she retaliated by ruining Wen Yingying's entire birthday party, to vent Wen Yingying's anger. He locked Su Shunning in a sealed room. Unbeknownst to him, Wen Yingying had secretly thrown numerous snakes inside to terrify her. From then on, Su Shunning was left with a severe psychological trauma, breaking into a cold sweat at the mere sight of a snake. Later, after the Su family went bankrupt, Su Shunning came looking for him. She knelt before him, begging him to spare her parents. But he remembered how the Su family had called Wen Yingying a homewrecker and slapped her across the face. He also remembered how the Su parents had looked down on him back then, saying he wasn't good enough for Su Shunning and forcing him to let her go. He was the one who personally brought about the Su family's ruin. He never imagined that the Su family parents would take their own lives over this. He was even more shocked when Su Shunning suddenly fell into the river and drowned. Trapped in the nightmare, Fu Sihan screamed no, and stop, countless times, but it was all in vain. In the dream, he was utterly heartless. For the sake of Wen Yingying, he tormented Su Shunning, the girl he had cherished since childhood, until her spirit was utterly broken. He still remembered seeing Su Shunning one last time before the accident. Her gaze held no love, no hatred, only a chilling emptiness. She was painfully thin, her reactions frighteningly slow, as if her mind had shattered. For 10 years, for Wen Yingying's sake, he had tormented Su Shunning. After Su Shunning's death, it was he who personally arranged her funeral. In death, a faint smile graced her lips, an expression of final peace. How could he inflict such pain on the girl he had watched over and protected since childhood? Fu Sihan awoke from the dream, his face streaked with tears. The dream felt so real, as if it had truly happened, so real that even after waking, he remained lost in it for a long time, unable to break free. His assistant watched him crying mechanically. Growing increasingly worried, "Mr. Fu, you're finally awake. You were crying the whole time you were unconscious, calling out for your wife over and over. The doctor said if you don't wake up soon, you might never wake up again." His words hung in the air, but Fu Sihan offered no reply. Suddenly, Fu Sihan jerked his hand back and delivered a stinging, heavy slap across his face. Once wasn't enough. He landed dozens of blows in rapid succession. His assistant watched him in horror. Fu Sihan didn't stop until he had struck dozens of times. Then he violently coughed up a mouthful of blood and collapsed to the ground once more. The assistant turned deathly pale, crying out, "President Fu." Chapter 17. Fu Sihan is critically ill, between life and death. After countless resuscitation attempts and over 20 days in the ICU, he was finally pulled back from the brink once more. While he lay unconscious, the Fu conglomerate had already gone bankrupt. The moment he woke up, he realized he had lost everything and was now saddled with billions in debt. In her office, upon learning that Fu Sihan had finally regained consciousness, Su Shunning fell silent for a few seconds before uttering flatly, "He's got 9 lives." With that, she turned her full attention back to her work. She and Gu Xiao had taken over Aining Group, and a mountain of work awaited them. Su Shunning thought she would be overjoyed the moment she personally brought down the Fu Empire. When the moment finally arrived, all she felt was relief. All she wanted now was to live a good life with Gu Xiao. She had no time to grieve over someone unworthy, nor any interest in taking pleasure in his downfall. After Fu Sihan woke up, his assistant hesitated briefly before informing him that the Fu Group had gone bankrupt. Fu Sihan was stunned for a couple of seconds before giving a calm, silent nod. "Where's Ningning?" His voice was hoarse and raspy from disuse after such a long period of unconsciousness. The assistant let out a sigh. "Miss Su is busy taking over Aining Group." "No, not Aining Group anymore. Miss Su personally changed the name. From now on, it's called Yuaning Group." Fu Sihan fell into a thoughtful silence. Aining. It meant he loves Su Shunning. Yuaning. It signifies that from this day forward, her life will be more about loving herself. Fu Sihan let out a low, soft chuckle, which was quickly followed by a light cough, a testament to his frail condition. He gave a slow nod. "That's good." Having worked for him for many years, his assistant watched him with a pang of sympathy. "Also, President Fu, Miss Su and Gu Xiao have set their wedding date. It's next month. Some things just aren't meant to be. No matter how hard you try, you should let go and stop torturing yourself." Fu Sihan hung his head. Upon hearing that Su Shunning and Gu Xiao were about to get married, his eyes still reddened slightly. He looked up at his assistant. "Could you do one last thing for me?" The assistant looked at his stubborn, intense expression and finally gave a nod. A few days later, Su Shunning returned to the country and publicly assumed the role of CEO of Yuaning Group herself. After work, she got into her car while on the phone with Gu Xiao. But the moment she got in, she sensed a figure approaching. Before Su Shunning could react, a sharp pain shot through her neck, her vision went black, and she began to slump toward the floor, only to be caught and held fast in a pair of strong arms. Just before she lost consciousness completely, Fu Sihan's face flashed before her eyes. When she opened her eyes again, Su Shunning found herself lying on a small bed, rubbing her sore neck. She sat up. A draft swept through the room, and Su Shunning stared blankly at her surroundings. She recognized it almost instantly. It was the very house she had stayed in when she got lost all those years ago. After decades, the house had fallen into a state of disrepair. The small bed beneath her creaked and groaned as she shifted to sit up. It wasn't easy for Grandma to raise 2 children all by herself. Back then, she shared a room with Fu Sihan, since they were, after all, a boy and a girl. Grandma hung a curtain between their 2 small beds. In those days, she and Fu Sihan would often talk through the curtain. Whenever she had a nightmare and was scared, Fu Sihan would take her hand and whisper the fairy tales he'd read from a discarded storybook into her ear, lulling her back to sleep. At that moment, a familiar voice came from beside her. "You're awake." Su Shunning turned her head and saw Fu Sihan lying on the other bed, just as he used to. The clothes he was wearing were the very set she had once loved most. Even his hairstyle was her favorite. Su Shunning pulled herself from the memory, her expression cold. "Fu Sihan, dwelling on the past won't make me soften towards you. It only makes me despise your betrayal even more. Ningning, I don't dare ask for your forgiveness, because I can't even forgive myself." Fu Sihan gazed at her with a complex look in his eyes, a glimmer of tears even visible within them. The guilt, pain, and regret in his expression were even more profound than what she had seen before he lost consciousness. Su Shunning's heart gave a sudden, cold lurch, and she frowned. "What is it that you want?" Chapter 18. Fu Sihan let out a soft sigh and spoke with a pleading tone. "Ningning, just stay with me one last time, okay? After this, I promise I won't bother you again." Su Shunning let out a soft, derisive snort. "If I said I didn't want to, would you really let me go?" Fu Sihan was momentarily stunned, then shook his head with a bitter smile. "No, it seems even this last time, I'm still letting you down." Su Shunning simply fell silent and said nothing more. Fu Sihan stood up and walked out. "You must be hungry. I'll go make you something to eat." With practiced ease, Fu Sihan got up and went to the kitchen, turning on the stove to start boiling noodles, the figure bustling before the low stove, just as in days gone by. Familiar places have a way of tugging at one's thoughts. Su Shunning hadn't been to this place in many, many years. Every spot she passed stirred up memories of the past, until a familiar scent wafted through the air. Fu Sihan emerged from the kitchen carrying 2 bowls of noodles. "All right, come and eat before it gets cold. Su Shunning was genuinely famished. Without any pretense, she went and took a seat at the dining table. The noodles Fu Sihan made used to be Su Shunning's favorite food. On top of the noodles were a few little flowers carved from carrot. When Su Shunning was little and refused to eat carrots, Fu Sihan learned to cook them this way just to coax her into having a bit more. Even without looking, Su Shunning knew there were 2 eggs nestled in the middle of the noodles. There was supposed to be one for each of them, but when they were children, Fu Sihan could never bear to eat his, always secretly slipping his portion to her instead. Even the pair of chopsticks she took were hers alone. On it, Fu Sihan had carved the words, "For Ningning's exclusive use." It was childish, but for the young Su Shunning, it brought immense joy. With an expressionless face, Su Shunning began eating her noodles in large mouthfuls, as if completely numb to everything. Fu Sihan watched her eat with that blank expression, his gaze lingering, before he too lowered his eyes and began to eat. But then, as he was eating, he gave a light cough and turned his face away. Ahem, ate too fast, choked a little. He offered the explanation, took a tissue, and turned his head to wipe his mouth. Su Shunning's grip on her chopsticks tightened, and out of the corner of her eye, she saw his eyes begin to glisten with tears. After the meal, Fu Sihan took her out once more. The car wound its way past many places they had once visited together. At each spot, memories of the past washed over them unbidden. Finally, the car came to a stop atop a great bridge. The spot where he stopped was, coincidentally, the exact place from which she had fallen from the bridge in her previous life. Su Shunning stared at the familiar bridge, and her face suddenly paled. Frowning at Fu Sihan, her tone became uncharacteristically agitated. "Fu Sihan, why did you come here all of a sudden? What exactly are you trying to do?" Seeing the sudden panic on her face, Fu Sihan felt a sharp, overwhelming pain in his heart. He knew it for certain without a single word being spoken. The events from his dream were what had truly happened in his past life. It was no dream at all, but reality. A bitter, sorrowful smile touched Fu Sihan's lips as he suddenly reached out and pulled Su Shunning into a tight embrace. "Ningning, please don't be afraid of me." "Alright, I won't. I will never hurt you again." Su Shunning's body trembled uncontrollably, a faint shiver she couldn't suppress. A chill settled in the pit of her stomach as a terrible possibility occurred to her. "You know, don't you? You remember." Chapter 19. Fu Sihan nodded. "I saw it in a dream." Su Shunning clenched her fist, then shoved Fu Sihan away with a sudden force, raising her hand to deliver a stinging slap across his face. Her expression was icy and severe to the extreme. "Since you've remembered, how dare you come to see me? How dare you show your face to me?" Fu Sihan grasped her hand, his voice laced with boundless anguish. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Su Shunning could hold back no longer. Tears streamed down her face as she screamed, her voice raw with anguish. "Sorry. Will sorry bring my parents back? Will sorry erase the fact that you drove me to the brink of despair? If you're truly sorry, then you should vanish from my sight forever." "Fu Sihan, I hate you. I hate you for loving me so deeply, only to abandon me so cruelly. I hate you for pushing me into this hell." "I'm sorry" are the most powerless, the most useless 3 words, and I can never give you an "it's okay" in return. Consumed by rage, her chest heaved violently as she turned to leave, but the moment she moved, her wrist was seized by Fu Sihan. The next moment, he seized her hand, then pulled out a rope and bound her wrists, trapping her on the bridge. Su Shunning stared at him in shock. "Fu Sihan, what madness is this now? Are you really going to drive me to my death for Ningning?" Fu Sihan shook his head vehemently. "No, please don't say that, Ningning. I'm begging you. I won't hurt you again. I swear I never will." With that, he suddenly raised his arms and pulled her into a tight embrace. Before Su Shunning could even process what was happening, Fu Sihan lowered his head and captured her lips in a forceful kiss. A torrent of overwhelming emotion instantly engulfed her. Desperation, reluctance, and a fierce, overwhelming love. She fought back violently then, desperately trying to evade him, yet, Fu Sihan exerted tremendous force. Su Shunning furrowed her brow and sank her teeth fiercely into his lips and tongue. Even in pain, Fu Sihan refused to let go. He didn't stop until the metallic taste of blood filled both their mouths. Until she was nearly gasping for air, Su Shunning roared, "Get out, don't touch me, you disgust me." Fu Sihan stared at her, dazed, and suddenly laughed. He lowered his head and pressed another kiss to her forehead. The kiss was fleeting, gone before she could even think to resist. Then, he walked slowly to the back of the car parked beside the bridge, opened the trunk, and dragged a person out. The person's eyes were vacant. their hands and feet bound, and their mouths sealed with tape. Unable to make a sound, it was when Ying, dragged along the ground by Fu Sihan all the way to the side of the bridge. She was utterly powerless to resist, her body trembling uncontrollably with terror. A sense of unease grew in Su Shunning's heart. She looked at Fu Sihan, her voice quivering. Fu Sihan, what on earth are you trying to do? The wind on the bridge was biting, chilling their hearts to the core. Fu Sihan stood at the edge of the bridge, looking at Su Shunning. Ning. If not for what happened in our past life, would you give me another chance? Su Shunning was silent for a few seconds before replying calmly, life doesn't have what-ifs. Fu Sihan let out a low, soft chuckle, a sound steeped in boundless sorrow. Indeed, there are no what-ifs in life, and time cannot flow backwards. If you do wrong, you must accept the consequences. He lowered his gaze to look at Wen Ying beside him, his voice a soft murmur. She hurt you again and again. And I failed to protect you. This time, I'll take her away. From now on, neither she nor I will ever be able to hurt you again. He looked back, his gaze lingering on Su Shunning with profound longing. Ning, I love you. With that, he suddenly seized Wen Ying and threw her straight off the bridge. Then, without a moment's hesitation, he climbed over the bridge railing and plunged into the vast, churning river below. It was the very same spot from which she had fallen. This was the path of atonement he had chosen. Su Shunning screamed in terror. Fu Sihan, yet, that familiar voice flashed before her eyes for just an instant, then vanished like a wisp of wind, dissipating into the depths of her gaze. Fu Sihan. Su Shunning collapsed to the ground, her body utterly limp as tears streamed unrestrained from her eyes. Before long, Gu Shao rushed to the scene. He freed the bound Su Shunning and held her tightly in his arms. His face a picture of profound relief at having her back, held fast in his embrace. Su Shunning looked toward the spot where Fu Sihan had vanished and could no longer hold back her sobs. From this day forth, we part forever, in life or death, we shall meet no more. Fu Sihan, we're even now. Story 2, Song Ji Hui hates me, yet he spends a fortune to support me. It's just that my face bears a strong resemblance to his white moonlight. I thought we were just satisfying each other's needs. After paying off my debts, I decisively fled with 8 male models. Unexpectedly, there was a plane crash, and I died by accident. At the funeral, Song Ji Hui announced to everyone, she is my wife, and we will be together forever. That night, the heir of the Song group was found to have committed suicide at home. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the age of 16, the year Song Ji Hui met his white moonlight. The young man rubbed a photo in his hand and murmured to himself, I must marry Qiao Ziyuan. My name is Qiao Ziyuan. 1. Sitting in the familiar high school classroom, I stared at my reflection in the window, wearing the blue and white school uniform. I was stunned for a long time. Is it true that I've been reborn? What are you daydreaming about? Can't you solve the math problem? Call me Brother Song, and I'll teach you. Someone gently patted the back of my head. I turned around as I heard the voice and met Song Ji Hui's handsome but irritating face. Just a moment ago, my soul was still floating in the air. I watched helplessly as Song Ji Hui, dressed in a disheveled suit and with a pale face, held a fruit knife against his artery, his eyes filled with a paranoia and madness I had never seen before. Qiao Ziyuan, does it hurt? Wait for me, I'm coming to accompany you. I couldn't figure it out. Song Ji Hui is my benefactor. He spent money on me, invested resources in me, and single-handedly turned me into a top actress. Others say that he loves me deeply. What they don't know is that on countless nights filled with passion, this man would take off his suit and viciously bite my lips. Qiao Ziyuan, I really hate you. If it weren't for the fact that you look somewhat like Yao Yao, I wouldn't even give you a second glance. But if someone hates another person, how could they commit suicide for her? Or could it be, Song Ji Hui, don't you secretly love me? I slapped my thigh, suddenly realizing something. The young man had just finished playing basketball and returned to his seat. When he tilted his head back to drink water, his smooth neck was fully exposed. Upon hearing my words, his actions froze. He coughed violently, and his ears turned red all the way to the base of his neck. You. Just as the atmosphere was getting awkward, a slender white hand held a piece of tissue and placed it between him and me. Here you are. Don't drink so urgently. The voice was so gentle that it seemed to drip water, completely different from my bold and unruly manner. The girl had shoulder-length hair, and her eyes, which were just like mine, looked at me with a hint of reproach. Sister, how can you make such a joke casually? You scared him. It was Gu Qingyao, my half-sister. She was also the white moonlight that Song Ji Hui couldn't forget many years later. 2. In my previous life, I once asked Song Ji-hwi this question, "You're so good to me, do you like me?" At that time, I had just finished a night scene and was starving. Song Ji-hwi stood in the kitchen wearing an apron, calmly pouring oil and cooking noodles. "Don't think too much. We're just getting what we need from each other." The man's voice was cold. "Oh, that's for the best." I drawled and smiled heartlessly. "Keep your heart in check, Song Ji-hwi. A person can't be so cheap. After being dumped by me once, how could you still come crawling back?" Song Ji-hwi was so angry that he took out the support agreement from the bedside table and threw it at me with a cold face. "Shut up, Xiao Ziyuan. You're good for nothing except for that face of yours." Hardly anyone would believe it. In this love game where I was a substitute, I was the one in control. Song Ji-hwi and I were childhood sweethearts. In our sophomore year of high school, he blushed as he confessed his love to me. Out of curiosity, I agreed. We had a period of affectionate time together, but soon, there was a traitor within the Song group. The capital chain broke, and it was on the verge of bankruptcy. Song Ji-hwi was forced to transfer schools. Before leaving, he almost pleaded with me, "Can you not fall in love with someone else for my sake?" I had a blank expression as I resolutely broke free from his grasp. "We were just having some fun, don't take it seriously, okay? I've been pampered since I was a child, and the person I marry in the future should also be of the same social status. If you weren't from the Song family, I wouldn't even look at you. Besides, now that the Song family is on the verge of bankruptcy and you have nothing, do you think I would wait for you?" I still remember the look in Song Ji-hwi's eyes, a mixture of sadness, anger, and disbelief. Gu Qingyao, who had always had a crush on him, didn't hesitate to give up her place of being recommended to a prestigious noble academy and resolutely went with him, accompanying him through 3 long years of hardship. It's easy to imagine, the more Song Ji-hwi hated me, the more he loved Gu Qingyao. 3. Through the torrent of time. When I saw the two of them together again, I suddenly had an epiphany and thought of a way to break the situation. Since God has given me a chance to live a new life, instead of having a love-hate relationship for more than 20 years and still ending up badly, it's better to match up the true lovers. To be fair, although Song Ji-hwi says one thing and means another and is extremely stubborn about his pride, he is actually a very nice person and deserves a healthy and beautiful relationship. After thinking it through, I patted Song Ji-hwi on the shoulder, acting like we were good buddies. "Ha ha ha, I'm just kidding. How could young Master Song like me? Class is about to start, let me copy your homework. I didn't do well in my studies." And Song Ji-hwi specially applied to be my deskmate to tutor me. Occasionally, when there wasn't enough time, he would let me copy his homework first and then explain it to me in detail later. But this time, he snatched the workbook away and, with a dark face, spat out 3 words, "Do it yourself. Since you called me young Master Song, do you really think you can copy the young master's homework?" I could hear the sarcasm in his tone and pouted, saying, "Tisk, you're more petty than a sesame seed." Humph. Song Ji-hwi didn't take the tissue from Gu Qingyao. Instead, he grabbed the handkerchief I had placed on the table and casually wiped his mouth. At that time, Gu Qingyao had just transferred in, and Song Ji-hwi didn't care about her as much as he did later. Seeing her stamping her foot in frustration and preparing to leave, I took a deep breath and spoke up at the right moment. "Gu Qingyao, let's switch seats." "Huh?" Gu Qingyao looked at me suspiciously. Are you willing to separate from him?" Song Ji-hwi and I had a bond from growing up together since childhood. We often played around and were as close as Siamese twins. Many classmates in the class assumed that we were a couple, but we just hadn't made it public. There are other people who do well in their studies besides him. My voice was calm as I drew a clear line with that one sentence. Song Ji-hwi was obviously anxious. "Come on, is it just because I won't let you copy my homework? You can't be this serious when joking around." I forcefully pulled the handkerchief back from his hand and calmly started packing my school bag. "I'm serious. I'll go and talk to the head teacher after class at noon. You haven't helped me much. Sometimes, when you talk too much, it even affects my studies. In short, I don't want to be your deskmate anymore." Song Ji-hwi couldn't adapt to my sudden change. "I don't agree." His facial features were profound, and when he looked at me with a gloomy face, a sense of oppression came over me. Gu Qingyao looked at me and then at him. She asked cautiously, "Are you two quarreling?" I dug my nails into my palm and tried to make my voice sound calm. "Song Ji-hwi, don't act like we're breaking up. We're just friends. Where I sit and who I switch seats with are my own business." 4. After I earnestly proposed to the head teacher several times, Song Ji-hwi and Gu Qingyao finally sat together. Song Ji-hwi had a gloomy face for several days and ignored everyone, looking as if someone owed him 8 million. I saw it and was anxious in my heart, so one day after school, I stopped Gu Qingyao. You like Song Ji-hwi, right? I'll help you chase him. She didn't agree immediately. You're not using Song Ji-hwi to take revenge on me, are you? After my mom married your dad, you moved out of the Chow family's villa. I know that although you don't say it, you've always hated me in your heart. Gu Qingyao called me sister, but in fact, we weren't very familiar with each other. The memories of my previous life ended when she accompanied Song Ji-hwi to transfer schools. I don't know why the two of them didn't end up together in the end. She went to the UK to pursue a master's degree and became the white moonlight that Song Ji-hwi couldn't let go of. You're thinking too much. I was surprised by her imagination. I really don't like you, but it was my dad's choice to divorce and remarry, and it has nothing to do with you. Gu Qingyao's delicate eyebrows twitched slightly. Fine, my dear sister, then tell me, how can I catch up with Song Ji-hwi? The corners of my eyes curved into a smile, and I spilled out the details like pouring beans from a bag. He can't eat spicy food, his favorite fruit is cherries, and his most interesting subject is mathematics. He often plays basketball in his spare time. You can go and watch his games, but he won't drink the water given by girls. The best way is to fill his water cup before he comes back, so he won't have a reason to refuse. Oh, and the most crucial point is that he's afraid of dogs, but there are several stray dogs on the way from school to his home, so you can have the nerve to walk him home, and he definitely won't refuse. Scenes from the past between Song Ji-hwi and me flashed before my eyes. Our families lived close to each other, and we had been walking to school together since kindergarten. Every time a small dog passed by on the road, he would reflexively hide behind me. He held my hand tightly. Dog, it's so big, Xiao Ziyuan, protect me quickly. I couldn't help but look down on him. You're such a coward, look how scared you are. Finally, I patted him on the shoulder to comfort him. Don't be afraid, when I become a big star, I'll take care of you. As the little dog walked away, Song Ji-hwi let out a long sigh of relief. He tilted his head and thought for a moment. Then I'll earn money to fund your movies. I happily high-fived him. It's a deal. I can't forget that quiet summer night, with the warm light of the street lamps shining down. The little Song Ji-hwi suddenly turned his head and said seriously, Xiao Ziyuan, we have to stay together even when we grow up. I talked until my mouth was dry, and Gu Qingyao benefited a lot. Why are you helping me? She asked. I smiled. You two are a perfect match. My dad didn't have much interaction with Gu Qingyao, but in my previous life, when I was in a desperate situation, I received an anonymous transfer of money. It was from London, UK. I knew it was from her, but I didn't touch that money. Gu Qingyao likes Song Ji-hwi, so I'll help her as it suits the situation. Consider it as repaying a favor. Gu Qingyao was very action-oriented. The next day, she put into practice what I had told her. She brought cherries for Song Ji-hwi, filled his water cup with water at the right temperature in advance, and cheered for him hoarsely on the basketball court. Song Ji-hwi's attitude towards her changed from being polite and distant at first to joking and playing around. It seemed that they had become very familiar friends. Once, after evening self-study, I secretly followed them. I saw Gu Qingyao walking beside Song Ji-hwi with a wooden stick and gently comforting him. Some people are afraid of dogs, but actually, dogs are more afraid of people. Stray dogs are really pitiful. Song Ji-hwi stared at her for a while, and a gentle smile curled up at the corners of his mouth. Thank you, Gu Qingyao. Under the dim street lights, the young man and woman walked side by side, and the scene was particularly warm, but I took several deep breaths. There was no joy of achieving my wish as I had expected. I just felt pain in my eyes and in my heart. 5. After school at noon, Song Ji-hwi and Gu Qingyao went to the cafeteria for lunch together. The sound of their laughter made my heart feel stuffy. I stood up abruptly and decided to visit my mom in the psychiatric hospital in the suburbs. As soon as I entered, I saw her wearing an ill-fitting hospital gown, sitting in the yard basking in the sun. My dad, dressed in a suit, stood beside her and said in a low voice, as long as you give up the division of property and leave the house clean, I will support Yuan until she gets married and give her the best education within my ability, but if you insist on being delusional and fighting for it, a hint of threat crept into the man's voice, then I will give up her custody and let her fend for herself with you, a crazy person. My mom smiled bitterly. Do you really have to push me to a dead end and even threaten me with our daughter? My dad coldly retorted. When dealing with abnormal people, you have to use abnormal means. Don't you? fine, as long as you treat Yuan well. She chooses the second option. I raised my voice and interrupted my mom, angrily staring at this heartless man. I will live with my mom. We should get every penny of the property that belongs to us. Yuan, don't say such angry words. Her schizophrenia and anxiety disorder have a very high genetic probability. Only by staying with dad can you get the best treatment. My mom also held my hand tightly. Yes, Yuan. What your dad said makes sense. I'm a crazy person. You're still young and can't waste your time on me. Regardless of what illness she has, whether it's cancer or a mental illness, she is my mom. I'm not like you, a heartless man who is good at calculating. I will never leave her. I slowly exhaled and made the same choice as in my previous life. Dad, I still call you Dad. If there's nothing else, you can leave. Before my dad left, he gave me a deep look. No one can stand having someone on the verge of going crazy by their side. Over the past 10-odd years, I have been more than kind to your mom. Yuan, it won't be long before you regret the decision you made today. On the way back, my mind was in a mess. There was still more than half an hour before the afternoon class started, and the classroom was empty. I immediately saw the seat by the window. Gu Qingyao had gone out, and Song Ji-Huai was rubbing a photo in his hand, muttering something. The sunlight seemed to gild his profile, making him incredibly good-looking. At the same time, I could clearly see the person in the photo, with delicate features, a high ponytail, and a beaming smile. It was me. The chirping of cicadas filled the air, and everything around me seemed to fade away. I understood the shape of Song Ji-Huai's mouth. I must marry Qiao Ziyuan. I was in a daze for a moment. It was as if I had returned to my previous life when I had been working hard. Finally, after paying off my debt to Song Ji-Huai, I hired 8 male models at once and happily went on vacation to the Maldives. Unexpectedly, the plane crashed. My body was frozen in the mortuary for 3 days, and no one claimed it. It was not until Song Ji-Huai, who had been on a business trip, came back that he held a grand and decent funeral for me. When someone asked about the relationship between us, he stared at my posthumous photo and announced to everyone in a hoarse voice, "She was my wife. We will be together forever." The scenes overlapped. I stumbled in. Song Ji-Huai, are you crazy? Song Ji-Huai was startled by my sudden action, and a red flush appeared on his cold, pale cheeks. He coughed twice and didn't dare to look at me directly. Gu Qingyao said that I should take my time when chasing a girl, but I really can't stand living without you. Since you've heard it, then I'll make a formal confession. He couldn't confess. Alarm bells rang in my heart. Song Ji-Huai had been ruined by me once, and I definitely couldn't make the same mistake again. I snatched the photo from his hand and threw it on the ground. I treat you as a brother, but you're a pervert. Song Ji-Huai stood there stupidly, feeling both ashamed and annoyed. After a 2-minute silence, he let out a sigh. Okay, I was abrupt. I apologize to you. He picked up the photo and carefully blew off the dust on it. He grabbed my wrist and made me sit down, his peach blossom eyes full of concern. What's wrong? Are you in a bad mood? Did your dad make you angry again? Damn it, I'll go and reason with him. I hung my head. Because of his sincere and candid concern, I burst into tears without warning. Stop liking me. I'm selfish, profit-seeking, and heartless. There will be no good end to liking me. No, Qiao Ziyuan, it's not like that. Song Ji-Huai bent his fingers to wipe away my tears, his expression more serious than ever. You have a passionate personality, you're loyal, and you have a kind heart. You are too many to finish listing even if I talk for 3 days and 3 nights. It's easy and happy to fall in love with you. So I burst into sobs. But you'll die, Song Ji-Huai, you'll die. 6. Just like in the novels about reconciliation after a breakup. In my previous life, I had cynically mocked Song Ji-Huai, who had transferred schools due to his family's bankruptcy. 7 years later, at a charity gala held by a well-known brand, I was a waiter. I was scolded by the manager for breaking a plate. When I broke down and cried, Song Ji-Huai, dressed in a well-tailored suit, descended from the sky. How much do I need to pay for it? I'll pay for her. Sorry, Mr. Song, I didn't know she was yours. The manager changed his irritable demeanor and smiled obsequiously. You donated 5 million in the name of the Song Corporation. What's a plate? Song Ji-Huai looked down at me with a coldness in his eyes that I had never seen before. Qiao Ziyuan, when you laughed at me for being poor and said I wasn't worthy, did you ever think there would be a day like this? He probably wanted to humiliate me, but I wasn't the least bit embarrassed. I slowly stood up and retorted coldly, a proper ex should be as good as dead, instead of suddenly popping up like a zombie. Song Ji-Huai gritted his molars and relentlessly chased after me. Damn it, are you short of money? why are you here? I pushed him away and walked forward. The next second, an arm wrapped around my waist and forcefully pressed me against the wall. The man's hot breath was right beside my ear. If you're short of money, I can support you. Qingyao has gone abroad, and you look somewhat like her. 10,000 yuan a month. You can be her substitute and stay by my side. What do you think? He leaned close to my ear, his tone frivolous, deliberately trying to embarrass me. According to my character, I should have slapped him, but in reality, my mom's medical expenses were increasing day by day. I had been struggling to make it to my junior year of college by working part-time while studying. The burden of life was weighing me down, and my mom had frequent outbursts and attempted suicides. What was even more terrifying was that I was gradually losing control of my emotions. If there was no money for medical treatment, I would most likely become the crazy woman that others talked about. So after a long silence, I looked up at him and said softly, in that case, thank you, Mr. Song. I was studying at a film academy. I originally planned to drop out and work after finishing that year to pay for my mom's medical treatment. Song Jihuai was as tight-lipped as a clam, although he was sharp-tongued. He helped me pay off my student loans and intended to help me debut. Don't be stingy with the money I give you. If it gets out, people will think I'm a miserly benefactor. A large amount of resources were thrown at me. I took on acting roles and participated in variety shows. In just 3 years, I went from an unknown college student to a sought-after first-line actress, but my genetic traits began to surface, and my mental state continued to deteriorate, forced by the situation. I could only send my mom to the Maldives to recuperate first, and then unilaterally tear up the support agreement and follow her. After deducting the possible future treatment expenses from the money I earned since my debut, I transferred the vast majority of the remaining money to Song Jihuai's account. First, to pay off my debt. After all, he had helped me so much. Second, to draw a clear line with him. I was like a bomb that could explode at any moment, and there was really no need to delay him. I won't be the substitute anymore. I wrote a few big words on the bathroom mirror with lipstick. I pretended not to notice Song Jihuai's feelings for me and used the excuse of being Gu Qingyao's substitute as always, afraid that he wouldn't believe it. I even hired 8 male models to act with me, so when the news of my plane crash came out, the anti-fans mocked me. How lustful is Qiao Ziyuan? Can she handle 8 male models? Is this woman letting herself go because she's been dumped by her benefactor? Sigh. Who doesn't know that Qiao Ziyuan is backed by the person in charge of the Song Corporation? To be honest, what does she deserve? Song Jihuai, who had never used Weibo before, specially registered an account. Qiao Ziyuan is a very professional actress. Even without me, she can shine on the screen. Those who hide behind the screen and belittle her and spread baseless rumors, the Song Corporation will hold them accountable according to the law. 7. It felt like an eternity before the shock in Song Jihuai's eyes gradually faded away. His light-colored lips moved, as if he was eager to confirm something. But the words that came out took a different turn. What do you mean I'll die? Qiao Ziyuan, what are you talking about? Nothing. I sniffled and pinched my fingertips to force myself to calm down. If I confessed that I was reborn now, Song Jihuai would most likely think that I had gone crazy because of the math problems. Then why do you look so sad? Also, why are you rejecting me? You should give me a reason. I avoided his gaze. It's because, I don't have feelings for you. I don't believe it. Qiao Ziyuan, if you have the guts, look me in the eye and say it again. I suddenly turned around and glared at him. Stop talking nonsense. I said I have no feelings. Song Jihuai suddenly pouted, his peach blossom eyes staring straight at me. He looked extremely aggrieved. The words that I hadn't finished speaking got stuck in my throat. I coughed twice. We're still students. I want to get into a good university. Falling in love will be a distraction. Okay then. Song Jihuai lowered his eyelashes. By the way, there's something I need to remind you. I said seriously, you need to be careful of your uncle. Song Jihuai, in his previous life. In the previous life, the Song Corporation, which had been thriving, faced the most serious economic crisis in its history. It was because Song Jihuai, who was middle-aged and accomplished nothing, was jealous that Song Jihuai, who was still in high school, was being groomed as the heir and betrayed the company's important secrets to the rival company. As a chain reaction, the capital chain broke. I stopped my words and tried to express it euphemistically. He has always been at odds with your dad. There's a chance he'll do something harmful to the Song Corporation. In short, you must be on your guard. Song Jihuai nodded vigorously. Just when I thought he had listened and my heart that had been hanging in the air was slightly relieved, The young man tilted his head and said something astonishing. You're actually concerned about my family's company. Heh, you say you have no feelings for me. If you're deliberately rejecting me to get my attention, then I'll tell you, you've succeeded. Get lost. I gave him a white look. I'm being serious. Did you hear me? Got it, got it. Song Jihui took out a copy of 5 years of college entrance exams and 3 years of mock exams from the drawer. This is for you. There are my annotations and detailed explanations of the knowledge points for each question in it. This, a thickened version of the math exercise book. I instinctively wanted to refuse. Don't you think I'm losing enough hair already? Song Jihui stuffed it into my hand without giving me a chance to refuse. Who just said they wanted to study hard and get into a good university? Take it. In my previous life, I was seriously biased in my studies. Math was dragging down my overall score, resulting in a low score in the general culture course. In order to ask my dad to spend money and pull some strings to get me into the School of Journalism and Communication, my mom not only voluntarily gave up the division of property but also knelt down in front of Gu Qingyao and her mom, losing all her dignity. Thanks, I secretly made up my mind that this time I must improve my grades and not give my dad a chance to take advantage of the situation. Sister, Song Jihui, you too. The preparatory bell rang, and the classmates walked into the classroom in 2s and 3s. Gu Qingyao directly walked towards us, with a teasing smile on her face. Are you two back on good terms? Let me be nosy. Was the confession successful? In an instant, I had an epiphany and wanted to grab her collar and ask her what was going on. Fine, now I'm really curious. I taught you how to chase him, but what on earth is going on? Gu Qingyao shrugged. I did as you said, but I didn't succeed in chasing him. It's better to let you two be together, but I clearly saw that night. I saw the two of them going home together. And Gu Qingyao even helped Song Jihui fend off the stray dogs. It was just an act. If I didn't push you, when would you recognize your true feelings? I was both ashamed and annoyed, so it was fake that I helped you chase Song Jihui, and you two were plotting against me. Song Jihui showed no sign of guilt and accused me through gritted teeth. You pushed me towards someone else, so I had no choice but to resort to this last resort. Also, Qiao Ziyuan. I'm not actually afraid of dogs anymore, he said softly. I only pretended to be afraid when you were by my side. My face burned all the way to the base of my neck. Shut up, Gu Qingyao blinked, looking like a cunning rabbit. Then, do you want to switch seats back? Song Jihui quickly glanced at me and nodded vigorously. I forced myself to remain calm and fled in a hurry. No need. 8. After solving all the messy things, I focused all my energy on my studies. Fortunately, I hadn't fallen too far behind, and there was still enough time. Song Jihui always paid attention to my grades. Before school ended every night, he would check the completion of my homework. He was always available to answer my questions, becoming my exclusive little teacher. Besides him, once during a break, I was troubled by a difficult problem. Gu Qingyao, who happened to pass by, suddenly stopped. Connect point A and point C and draw an auxiliary line to take a look. Suddenly enlightened, I smiled at her, and she smiled back. In this second life, my relationship with this stepsister had improved a lot compared to before. In the final exam of the second semester of senior high school, my grades in all subjects improved, especially in math. I finally crossed the passing line, scoring 20 points more than the last time. The summer vacation passed in a flash. On the day of the start of the second year of senior high school, I couldn't report on time, because the lawsuit with my dad was in court, and my mom's mental state was not good. I had to attend as the plaintiff. This profit-seeking man had promised well, but he refused to divide the property that belonged to my mom and me. At this time in my previous life, my dad had extensive connections, and I didn't have the money to hire a lawyer. After arguing my case, I only managed to get a pitiful amount of living expenses. The day before Song Jihui's family had trouble, I had just saved my mom who had tried to cut her wrists. I was completely exhausted. So when he said he was transferring schools and asked me to wait for him, I didn't hesitate to break his hold on me. In this life, the situation didn't seem to improve with my rebirth. The treatment costs for my mom were high, so I had no choice but to transfer her from the hospital ward to our home. I asked for leave from the evening self-study with the head teacher and stayed at home to take care of her. My mom's condition fluctuated. For the umpteenth time, she grabbed a kitchen knife and went to chop at the neighbor's door. I hugged her around the waist with all my strength and shouted, "Mom, calm down." Behind the protective railing, the neighbor aunt cursed at us. Not to be mean, but can you move this crazy person out? if there's a next time. I'll call the police. As soon as I snatched the knife from my mom's hand, I didn't have time to be scared. I hunched over and apologized to the neighbor. That's when Song Jihuai and Gu Qingyao showed up. If I remember correctly, Xiao Ziyuan's family lives here. The girl's words stopped abruptly. In the narrow and shabby stairwell, I locked eyes with Song Jihuai, who had climbed more than a dozen floors out of breath and furrowed his brows in disbelief. The thing I was most afraid of had happened. In an instant, I froze in place, like a criminal waiting for judgment. There was a suffocating silence. Shock, regret, and self-blame alternated on Song Jihuai's face. I swallowed hard and felt a strange sense of relief. Fortunately, there were no embarrassing questions that made me feel humiliated. Coming back to his senses, he naturally apologized to the neighbor and on my behalf. Then he helped my mom back to the bedroom. Did I see it wrong? Song Jihuai's outer corners of the eyes are so red. Is he feeling sad? But it's me who's embarrassed. What on earth is he sad about? Gu Qingyao walked over and patted my shoulder lightly. Song Jihuai was worried about you because you haven't gone to evening self-study for several days and you've been asking for leave during the day. That's why he asked me to bring him to see you. Judging from the reactions of the two of you, he doesn't know about your mother, does he? I gave a self-deprecating smile. Now that he knows, he should give up. Gu Qingyao took my hand. The warm touch spread from the palm of my hand to my chest, making me feel much more at ease. She said, "Sis, you really should look in the mirror at your current expression. You look worse than when you cry. Is it really that hard to admit that you like him? Don't think I'm meddling. I'm speaking directly because I consider you two my friends. If you have difficulties, just talk to Song Jihuai. Isn't it better to solve problems and face them together?" I slowly raised my eyes, my voice hoarse. What if I say that I inherited my mother's mental illness? 9. You've seen my father's attitude towards my mother. If Song Jihuai and I really get together, who can guarantee that I won't follow in my mother's footsteps? Perhaps she didn't expect this aspect. Gu Qingyao stared at me and couldn't say a word for a long time. I shook my head, my voice very soft. The person you think is your significant other might turn into a deadly knife. I don't dare to take that risk. Song Jihuai and I are childhood friends, but my father cares about his reputation. Under his deliberate concealment, Song Jihuai doesn't know much about my family and has very little knowledge of the specific situation of my family. Regarding the matter of the hereditary mental illness, I haven't mentioned a word to him in both lifetimes. When I watched TV when I was a child, I always thought that many misunderstandings between the male and female protagonists were unnecessary. At that time, I always thought, you guys should just speak clearly. You're so hesitant when you talk. Only after experiencing it did I understand that some words are really hard to say, and we must also miss out on some things. This is also why I pushed Song Jihuai towards Gu Qingyao. Being with a potential mental patient won't lead to happiness, just like my parents, at that time. We had a very unpleasant argument and said a lot of harsh words. In fact, I was afraid that I would regret it. Song Jihuai is a very proud person. Most likely, he won't go back to his ex. Sis, Gu Qingyao wanted to say something more. I interrupted her with a smile. Don't you like him? Why are you trying to match us up instead? Gu Qingyao snorted coldly. Even a fool can tell that Song Jihuai isn't interested in me. Why should I go out of my way to flatter someone who doesn't care? She raised her chin, and her haughty expression had a hint of inexplicable cuteness. There are 20 trillion men in the world. I'm so excellent. I don't have to be with Song Jihuai. I was stunned for a moment and fully agreed. That's right. Song Jihuai peeked out from behind the door. I don't know how long he had been eavesdropping. Auntie has been coaxed to sleep by me. Xiao Ziyuan, I came to thank you. Gu Qingyao volunteered. Then I'll go and stay in the bedroom. You two can talk. I don't want to be a third wheel. The crisis of the Song family has been resolved, right? I asked Song Jihuai. If you hadn't told me that Song Jihuai was up to something, my father and I wouldn't have been able to expose him so quickly. I let out a long sigh and then laughed bitterly. Even without me, the result would have been the same. Song Jihuai took the opportunity to show off. Not bad. I didn't expect you to have so much confidence in me. I looked at him with gentle eyes. Song Jihuai, you've been reborn too, right? 10. At first, I just felt that something was off. I know Song Jihuai too well. He's arrogant and likes to show his kindness in a roundabout way, but the Song Jihuai in this life seems to have suddenly unlocked the lock on his mouth. He keeps saying sweet words. There's no reason that when I painstakingly taught Gu Qingyao the skills of pursuing a man, he not only didn't take the bait, but also confessed earlier than expected. I was truly certain of all this when I asked him to keep an eye on Song Jihai. Song Jihai didn't ask me for the reason, he didn't even have the slightest doubt. With thunderous means, he found out the handhold of Song Jihai and neatly dealt with this hidden danger. His calmness and the proficiency of his methods don't seem to belong to a high school student at all. Instead, he looks like a seasoned veteran in the business world. If he hadn't been reborn too. I couldn't think of any other reason. I originally wanted to tell you after everything was settled. Song Jihai and I confronted each other for a long time, and all the events of the past and present lifetimes flashed before my eyes one by one. I can't really describe how I feel. There's a ball of cotton blocking my chest, making me feel sour and swollen. When Song Jihai spoke again, his voice was a bit hoarse. In the last lifetime, I tried my best to climb up the social ladder, just so that one day I could be worthy of you. But when I finally got you back, I couldn't help but hold on to the words you said back then. Even though I desperately wanted to reconcile with you, I was too proud to take the initiative to speak up. In a hoarse voice, he told me, I saw that you needed money at that time, so I fabricated a sugar baby agreement, determined to humiliate you. Gu Qingyao and I actually have no relationship. After transferring to our school, she chased me for a while. After I clearly refused her, she gave up. Since she went to study in the UK, we haven't seen each other again. In the shabby living room of the rental house, Song Jihai curled up on the sofa and sobbed with his hands covering his face. If only I had asked you why you needed the money. It's all my fault for being so proud and not being able to bring myself to make peace. Xiao Ziyuan, I'm sorry, your ending shouldn't have been like that. After witnessing everything, Song Jihai finally understood my insincerity. Self-blame and regret engulfed him like the deep sea. I wouldn't have told you even if you asked. I gently hugged him, conveying a great deal of comforting power. As you said, human pride is really ridiculous. You were too proud, and so was I. After we reunited, I was clearly grateful for your rescue, but I didn't want to reveal my broken family of origin and my precarious mental state in front of the person I liked. Repeated harsh words pushed you further and further away. I tried my best to force a smile. It's all in the past, Song Jihai. If it weren't for you making me a top actress, I wouldn't have been able to earn the money to treat my mother. Whether it was in the past life or this life, you've helped me a lot. You don't need to blame yourself. Holding back the urge to cry, I gripped his shoulders and said seriously, when I was reborn, I was determined to save you. I'm suffering from a serious illness and my future is uncertain, but you're different. You should have a wonderful life and definitely can't commit suicide again. It's too late. Song Jihai's outer corners of the eyes were red, and he stared at me without blinking. Xiao Ziyuan, I've fallen in love with you. We've known each other for so many years. Whenever you were bullied, I was always the first to object. I'm afraid of dogs, and you stood in front of me. Every bit of our time together has been engraved in my mind, and I can't see anyone else but you. I reached out to cover my eyes, but the tears still spilled out from between my fingers. What do you want me to do then? I was reborn with guilt. I had a chance to start over, but I watched the tragedy repeat itself. Song Jihai. What do you want me to do? Song Jihai hugged me back, so tightly that it felt as if he wanted to embed me into his bones and blood. You fool. Can't you think of yourself for once? You're so focused on preventing me from committing suicide, but I was reborn to save you too. A tear landed on my ear, and it was hot. As long as you're alive, I won't die, he said. 11. Song Jihai hired the best lawyer to defend me. In court, my father's ugly face was fully exposed. I knew she had a mental illness and still raised her for more than 10 years. It's already out of the affection between husband and wife. Not to mention that I've been managing the Chow group all along. Why should I give it up? I really wanted to rush up and slap him twice. Have you forgotten that my mother was once a wealthy young lady? At that time, the Chow group was just an unknown company. You tried hard to pursue her for her support. After you used her, you just cast her aside. How can there be such a good thing in the world? The Song family holds a pivotal position in the business world. With the help of Song Jihai, those who had taken my father's bribes no longer dared to take his side. According to the civil code, my mother and I not only received half of the total assets of the Chow family, but my father also had to give me enough living expenses regularly. I made a quick decision and moved to a house with a better environment. I also hired a professional caregiver to look after my mother 24 hours a day, so that I could go to class with peace of mind. Song Jihai was worried about my mother and me living alone. He came to visit us frequently and never stopped bringing fruits and supplements for my mother. He bought a bunch of men's underwear online and had them delivered to our house. He insisted that I hang them on the balcony to pretend that there was a man in the house. I'm really worried. How about I move in and live with you? Song Jihui said anxiously. I pretended to hit him. Get lost. You're so unreliable all the time. After winning the lawsuit, my mother was in a good mood because of the happy event, and the time she was sober gradually increased. She smiled and watched us fooling around. She also comforted Song Jihui. Don't worry, Xiao Song. In a society ruled by law, if there are bad people, we'll call the police immediately. I never expected it. It turned out to be a prophecy. I did well in the first monthly exam, and the head teacher even praised me by name. After finally waiting for school to end, I was in a hurry to tell my mother the good news, so I didn't wait for Song Jihui and left first. When that drunk hooligan pounced on me, I was completely stunned. Fortunately, in my previous life as a big star, I had a lot of experience dealing with obsessive fans. I aimed at the right position and suddenly kicked him in the groin. The hooligan was in pain, and a dagger slipped out of his sleeve and stabbed straight at me. In a split second, I realized that this was a premeditated revenge. The dagger shining with white light ultimately didn't hurt me, because Song Jihui rushed over. He fought with the gangster. In the chaos, he was stabbed in the abdomen. The sound of the police siren wailed. I stared in horror as Song Jihui slowly fell. My ears were buzzing. Xiao Ziyuan, am I cool? He spat out a mouthful of blood in my arms. Am I much cooler than those 8 male models? I tried in vain to press on the bleeding wound and burst into tears. You're not allowed to die, Song Jihui. I won't let you die. That hooligan was hired by my father and Song Jihui, 2 frustrated people, to commit murder. Early the next morning, the police handcuffed these 2 people in front of all the employees from the Song families and Qiao families companies respectively. My father had schemed for most of his life, but in the end, he had to spend the rest of his life in prison. Song Jihui's father had made arrangements with the people inside, and he and Song Jihui would receive the best treatment. Song Jihui was sent to the hospital in time and was not in serious danger. The doctor said it would be some time before he woke up. My mother and I stayed by his hospital bed. They don't know that on countless nights when we were infatuated with each other, this person took off his suit and fiercely bit my lips. Yuan, it was my fault for trusting the wrong person regarding your father, but you can't judge everyone by the same standard. As long as we keep our mood happy, our illness can be cured. My child, you've had a hard life. I don't want to see you torture yourself anymore. My eyes were still red. Mom, I understand. I thought I could be cruel and let go, but when Song Jihui fainted in my arms last night, I couldn't care about anything else. There was only one thought in my mind, to be with him. After going through so many separations and reconciliations in 2 lifetimes, we can't keep wasting time like this. Let's be together, the kind that will never part. As I said this, tears welled up in my eyes again. Don't cry. I accept your confession. A slender and fair hand slowly lifted up and wiped away my tears. For a moment, I laughed and cried at the same time. You're awake. Are you feeling any discomfort, doctor? I'll go and call the doctor. Don't change the subject. Song Jihui's face was pale, but the corners of his mouth were raised, and his eyes were shining brightly. Once I promise, I won't go back on my word. Xiao Ziyuan, we'll be together properly in this life. I'll earn a lot of money and spend it all on you. You can act and become a big star and achieve your dreams. I kept nodding and responding randomly. Okay, anything is fine. Outside the window, the cicadas were chirping. I looked at my little son. From then on, I can never look away. Story 2. Not long after I died, my childhood friend, a genius who was recommended for admission to the School of Chemistry, committed suicide. No one expected that he, who had always been calm and self-possessed, would go crazy and personally tie up the person who had harmed me, and detonate a bomb at the cost of ruining his own future. In the midst of the flames filling the sky, he murmured desperately, Yang, wait for me. When I opened my eyes again, I returned to my senior year of high school, the year when I had a cold war with him. My desk mate beside me leaned over with a smile and whispered in my ear, Song Yang, I just saw the draft paper of the top student Lin. Your name is written all over it. When we encountered a wild beast on the mountain, my best friend instinctively pushed me out as bait. I was pushed down the hillside by her. On the way, my legs hit a tree, and an intense pain shot through me instantly. Sorry, Song Yang. I will always remember you. Seeing that the wild beast's attention was drawn to me, my best friend immediately gritted her teeth, grabbed her beloved boyfriend, and fled quickly. Only I, with my broken legs, was left lying at the bottom of the slope waiting to die. damn it, this damn love-struck girl. She said she was going to break up with him the day before yesterday, and today she pushed me to feed the wild beast. There was no one around. I endured the pain and took out my phone. The moment I saw that there was only 1 bar of battery left, despair filled my heart. It's over. I'm probably going to meet my great-grandmother. I don't know why. Maybe it was an instinct. Or maybe I was truly unwilling. I actually dialed the phone number of my childhood friend Lin Su, with whom I had been in a Cold War for a year. The other side picked up the phone after just 1 ring. Hello, Lin Su's voice came from the other end, a bit cold. I'm busy, what's the matter? He was always like this, as if he wouldn't change his expression even if Mount Tai were to collapse in front of him. But if I had listened carefully, I should have been able to find that his tone was slightly trembling when he answered the phone, just like his inner feelings. I couldn't hold it back and burst into tears. Lin Su, I'm probably going to die soon. After I die, remember to delete all my chat records and browsing history. My bank card is in the pillowcase of my room, and the password is my birthday, although there are only 52 yuan left in it. Consider it as a keepsake I left for you. There was a harsh sound of a chair scraping against the ground from the other side. I heard him quickly say sorry to the teacher on the podium, and then there were rapid footsteps. Song Yang, what happened? I didn't dare to tell him what situation I was facing. I still spoke rapidly, seizing every second. Sorry, I shouldn't have always quarreled with you. It was my fault for hitting you when we were kids. And I also stole the chocolate in your drawer in high school. I was actually quite happy to know that you were recommended for admission. After all, you're so smart. You skipped 2 grades in school. I should have known earlier that you and I are not from the same world. You've always been so cold since we were little. You've never accepted anyone's confession. I didn't even dare to say that I actually liked you a little bit. Before I could finish speaking, he interrupted me quickly. Stop talking. I'm checking your location, wait for me. But it was too late. I watched as the wild beast approached me step by step. In the end, I died due to excessive blood loss. Before I died, I only had time to say 1 sentence. Lin Su, it hurts so much. I died. The first person to find my body was Lin Su. I don't know when he installed a positioning device in my phone. When he brought the police to find my body in the mountains, it was already the afternoon of the next day. In the dusk, my body was gnawed beyond recognition by the wild beast. And it was almost impossible to tell what my facial features looked like, but he just recognized me at a glance based on my location and the necklace around my neck. The moment he saw my body, he completely broke down. I had known him for more than 10 years, and I had never seen him lose control like this. He had always been extremely steady and calm, with a cold and fair face. He had always been this since we were little. He was clearly 2 years younger than me. But he skipped grades all the way and was finally directly recommended for admission to a chemistry major at a top university. The gap between him and me was like the difference between the clouds and the mud, but I never expected that a year later, he would hold my body and cry until his eyes were red, ignoring everyone's dissuasion. Later, he asked everyone around me and learned that I had gone mountain climbing with my best friend and her boyfriend that day, but in the end, the 2 of them came back alive, while I was eaten to death by the wild beast. He questioned the 2 of them like a madman why they had left me behind, but my best friend and her boyfriend, who were feeling guilty, insisted that I had accidentally gotten separated from them. He knew that my death was definitely related to these 2 people, so not long after, an explosion occurred in an abandoned factory on the outskirts of the city, resulting in the deaths of 2 men and 1 woman. 2 cowards who abandoned their friend, and a genius from the School of Chemistry with a promising future. He kidnapped the 2 of them with his own hands, made a bomb himself, and chose to die together with them to avenge me. In the midst of the flames filling the sky, he murmured desperately, "Yang Yang, wait for me." When I opened my eyes again, I found that I had returned to the high school classroom. Lin Su, my childhood friend who had just been recommended for admission, was standing in front of my seat. He was wearing a clean school uniform shirt, and his slightly long bangs covered his forehead. Looking further down, the eyes behind the thin, framed glasses were as clear as a cold spring. Song Yang. He called my name and asked as if casually, "Did you eat the chocolate in my drawer?" I stared at him blankly. After a few seconds, I nodded vigorously. "Yeah, it was me." "So what?" "Too." Lin Su was stunned for 2 seconds, then he suddenly averted his gaze and didn't dare to look at me. You already know." "What?" I didn't react. "In my previous life, I did eat the chocolate he put in his drawer. At that time, it was popular to give chocolates as a confession. When I found that chocolate, I thought it was given to him by some girl. after all. He was good-looking and smart, although his personality was a bit too cold. With the halo of a top student, he still fascinated a group of people who were attracted to intelligence. There were quite a few girls confessing to him every semester. For a moment, out of jealousy, I stole that chocolate, opened it, and ate it in a few bites. Later, when he came to ask me, I was so guilty that I refused to admit it. Then I secretly bought a chocolate of the same kind and put it back. In this new life, I decided to bravely admit my mistake. Sorry, I ate it, don't be angry. I'll buy you another one just like it. I didn't do it on purpose, I was just jealous. I was extremely honest, but I didn't expect that. As Lin Su listened, the tips of his ears turned red. I'm not blaming you, he gritted his teeth and said, seeing that I still looked stupid. He seemed a bit disappointed in me. Just then, the class bell rang. He didn't look at me anymore and just sullenly said, forget it, if you ate it, you ate it, you don't need to replace it. Then he turned around and returned to his seat. I was left sitting there, stunned. When I turned my head, my deskmate looked at me teasingly. Yo yo yo, flirting with your little betrothed again. It was the same in my previous life. Because they knew that Lin Su and I were childhood friends, the people in the class always liked to make jokes about us. Every time I would get angry and deny it, and then Lin Su would treat me even more coldly. Ahem, I coughed twice. Admitting that I used to be quite fake, I said, what? Are you jealous? My deskmate was shocked. Wow, Song Yang, you have such a thick skin now. Humph. Remembering that in my previous life, he had died together with those two people to avenge me, this touching childhood friendship. I think he likes me a little more than I thought. Thinking of this, I suddenly remembered that in my previous life, I had a big quarrel with him on the day the recommendation notice came out. And then we started a cold war that lasted for a year. Later, when I thought about it, it was probably the inferiority complex in adolescence that was at work. Lin Su and I grew up together, although there was a 2-year age difference. He was always more mature than me and accompanied me like an older brother. Until the recommendation notice came out, I had never been so clearly aware of the huge gap between him and me. It was a gap that I couldn't catch up with no matter how hard I tried. So after that day, a long cold war began between him and me. To be honest, it seemed more like I was unilaterally being petty and ignoring him. Every morning when I arrived at the classroom, he would still habitually put a bottle of warm milk on the corner of my desk. New notes would always appear in my drawer from time to time, and each subject was sorted out according to my weaknesses. On countless nights after the evening self-study, he silently pushed his bicycle and followed behind me, dispelling my fear of walking alone at night. Until a year later, I finally got into his school through my own efforts. Although I just barely made it through the admission, no one knew that on the day the scores came out, I lay on the bed crying until I was out of breath. It was a dark and arduous battle. The pressure of thousands of people competing for a single opportunity was always weighing on me, making it hard for me to breathe. On countless nights, I would break down and cry while doing my homework, but I didn't dare to waste time, so I had to do the problems while suppressing my sobs. Every time this happened, I would run to the balcony with red eyes and secretly look at the light in the study next door. He was there, so, even if I had to do my best, I still wanted to get a little closer to him. 3. Back in the senior year of high school classroom, I still didn't dare to waste a single second. In my previous life, the accident happened when I went mountain climbing with my best friend after the military training in my freshman year of college. At that time, the military training had just ended. Originally, I didn't want to go out to play because I thought I had gotten tanned, but I couldn't resist my best friend's coquetry. Besides, we were in different cities for college, and we would have fewer opportunities to meet in the future. So I agreed. Who knew that when we got there, I found out that her boyfriend, who had average grades and finally only got into a junior college, had also come along. Since we were already there, it wasn't appropriate to drive him away, so the three of us went up the mountain together. Now that I think about it, there were probably signs of what was to come. For example, every monthly exam in senior year of high school, as long as my score was higher than hers, she would lose her temper at me. Later, she would apologize to me, saying that she couldn't control her emotions because of the pressure. For example, every time she quarreled with her boyfriend, she would come to me crying. I felt sorry for her and advised her to break up. In front of me, she would agree, but then she would get back together with that jerk. And later, when she stayed out all night, she would ask me to cover for her. Another example was that every time I had a fight with Lin Su, she would spare no effort to undermine my self-esteem, constantly PUA me. and make me clearly recognize the gap between me and him, making me feel even more that I didn't deserve to confess to Lin Su. But aren't true friends supposed to wish you well and hope that you live a happy life? Such a so-called friend is not a real friend, but a ghost that aids the evildoer. So when the class bell rang and Liang Xiao rushed to my seat as she had done countless times before, skillfully took my arm, and said with a smile, "Come on. Let's go to the cafeteria quickly and help me grab the sweet and sour pork ribs." I suddenly shook off her hand without any warning, meeting her surprised gaze. I said coldly, "Grab it yourself, I'm not going." After saying that, I didn't care about her reaction. I turned around and went to the commissary to buy a rice ball and then returned to the classroom. Right now, it's still senior year of high school, and I still have time. In my previous life, I just barely passed the admission and didn't even dare to hope for a popular major. As long as I could be admitted, it was already a stroke of luck, but now it's different. I have a top student childhood friend. After hesitating for a while, I decided to wait for him to come back at Lin Su's seat. There was no one in the classroom at the moment. When I walked to the seat, I subconsciously looked into his drawer, then I saw that familiar packaging bag in his drawer again. It was the same chocolate as the one I had eaten. Me, damn it, who is it? For, when Lin Su came back, he saw me holding a chocolate in one hand and a rice ball in the other, and biting into the rice ball viciously. Lin Su, he silently sat down in the empty seat next to me, took out a test paper from my drawer, and started writing. Seeing this, I was even angrier. Very well, pretending to be aloof. Damn it, I'll eat. I finished eating with one bite of the rice ball and one bite of the chocolate. I only felt the bitterness of the dark chocolate spreading from my mouth to my heart, and my mind started playing background music for myself. Let me think, which song is suitable? At this moment, there was a sound of someone rummaging in their pocket beside me. Then a bottle of warm milk was inserted with a straw and pushed to the front of my desk. It was December, and the temperature was only a few degrees, but because it had been in his pocket, the milk was still steaming, along with his cold voice. "I never realized you liked chocolate so much before. Stop talking." I snatched the milk and took a big gulp. It took away the greasiness. "Don't worry, I'll pay you back 2 pieces. No, 4 pieces. Oh, it's okay, you can eat it," he said in an indifferent tone while doing the problems. "My dad brought back a big box when he was on a business trip. If you want to eat it, I still have some at home." Okay, you've grown up and learned to lie. Why did you bring 2 pieces of chocolate for no reason? 1 piece was for you." He stopped writing and turned to look at me. "The other piece was for you tomorrow." Damn it, playing this trick. It's kind of touching. 5. When my deskmate and her little sister came back after having lunch together, they saw me sitting next to Lin Su and listening to him explain the problems with a serious expression. My deskmate was shocked and couldn't help teasing. I woke up too early and saw Song Yang's little betrothed explaining the problems to her. I raised my head and raised my eyebrows at her. "Even if you say that, I won't break up with him." My deskmate and her little sister were immediately excited. Okay. You two are a perfect match, a celestial couple. Don't break up until you have a baby." I was used to this kind of teasing and didn't take it seriously. I turned my head and wanted Lin Su to continue explaining, but I was stunned the next second when I met Lin Su's face. I saw that his usually cold and fair face was now slightly red. After meeting my gaze, he looked away evasively and didn't even notice that the pen in his hand had drawn an arc on the draft paper. "Song Yang." He called my name softly, his tone a bit flustered. He opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. "What's wrong?" I said indifferently. "Don't mind her, they just like to make such jokes." Because Lin Su always had a cold face and had the halo of a top student, usually everyone didn't dare to joke with him, and Lin Su didn't know that he had a nickname of Little Betrothed. Before, I was always in a hurry to deny it, several times. I even tried to cover it up by loudly distancing myself from him in front of others on purpose. As a result, Lin Su became even more distant from me. I thought. After a pause, he turned his head aside, and his fingers unconsciously fiddled with the pen cap. "I thought that you disliked me, so you wanted to distance yourself from me." So, he also didn't dare to show intimacy with me in front of others anymore. The warm milk on the corner of the desk every morning. The notes in the drawer organized according to my weaknesses, and the way he silently maintained a distance of 3 meters from me after the evening self-study. These were all the farthest distances he could think of to keep from me. Damn it, what an innocent puppy he is. I suddenly thought of our childhood. When I was in kindergarten, I told my mom more than once that I disliked the younger brother next door. Because he walked slowly and was prone to falling, although he was a boy. He looked like a doll and was always bullied by other children. Because of him, I got into fights with other children many times. Even so, the next morning, he would still appear in front of my house on time, carrying a small school bag and calling me sister obediently. The chubby face in my memory gradually overlapped with the boy in front of me. The genius top student in the eyes of everyone was just my childhood friend who grew up with me. When the preparatory bell for class rang, I returned to my seat. My deskmate Jiang Yuan leaned over and asked in a low voice, "What's going on? Are you two finally not having a falling out anymore?" "What falling out?" I pretended not to know what she was talking about. Okay, it's not a falling out. It's just a little trick to seduce him." After saying that, she suddenly changed the subject and said mysteriously, "Song Yang, guess what I saw?" I was so scared that I immediately turned my head to look at the back door. And then I let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the homeroom teacher wasn't here. "What is it?" I turned back and asked irritably. "During last week's chemistry exam, when I was helping the teacher collect the test papers, I accidentally saw Lin Su's draft paper. Your name was written all over it. If the preparatory bell hadn't already rung, she would have liked to turn into a screaming chicken and shake me with both hands." "You didn't see Lin Su's reaction at that time?" "He was so shy and flustered, he immediately put it away and told me not to tell you." I was also a bit flustered from being shaken by her. "Then why are you still telling me? Come on, what's our relationship? Besides, that's the top student Lin, you should secretly be happy, you little rascal." Hearing this, I subconsciously turned my head to look at Lin Su's seat, but the moment I met his eyes, I happened to meet his gaze. He was looking at me too. I don't know how many times it was. Or maybe I was already used to it. When our eyes met, he seemed not to expect that I would suddenly turn around to look at him. Immediately, his eyes were filled with panic, and he buried his head as if to pretend to be doing his homework. I just turned back again, and the back of my ears started to feel hot. Secret love is an accidental turn of the head in class, but it just happens to meet his gaze. It turned out that he would also secretly look at me. But I completely failed to notice all of this before. Ignoring the teasing look from my deskmate, I pretended to be very busy and rummaged through the drawer to take out several textbooks, not noticing at all that this class was a self-study class. It was already 10 o'clock when the evening self-study ended. As usual, Lin Su silently pushed his bicycle and followed behind me, just like when we went to kindergarten as children. He was 2 years younger than me and always obediently followed behind me like a little tail that couldn't be shaken off. I turned my head to look at him, and he stopped in his tracks. At a distance of 3 meters, I waved at him. "Come here, get closer." His eyes lit up, and he immediately pushed the bicycle and came over. On a winter night, he and I walked side by side on the way home. The streetlights by the roadside stretched our shadows very long. "Starting from tomorrow, no. Tonight you'll start tutoring me. The goal is to get into the same university as you." Yang, are you not feeling well? You want to say there's something wrong with my brain? No, there's nothing wrong with you. Then why can you get into University A? But I can't. You can. 6. Getting into University A wasn't just empty talk. With Lin Su's help, I formulated a strict study plan. In my previous life, I was only admitted with the minimum score because I performed exceptionally well in the college entrance examination and was lucky when filling out the college application form. In this new life, I want to choose my favorite major together with Lin Su, probably because God has already given me a chance to start over. It doesn't want me to cheat again. I tried my best to recall, but I still couldn't remember the college entrance examination questions that I had done once in my previous life. So without too much hesitation, I threw myself into my studies. Later, Liang Xiao came to me several times, but I fobbed her off. She thought I was still angry because she lost her temper with me after the last monthly exam. As my score was more than 20 points higher than hers that time, she still wanted to muddle through it by saying she was under too much pressure, and she said she was sorry to me, but in fact, she still didn't forget to PUA me. Although your grades have improved a lot recently, Song Yang, I'm only saying this because I consider you my best friend. There's still a huge gap between you and Lin Su. He's a genius who skipped grades and was recommended for admission. Let's not overestimate ourselves anymore. Yeah, I nodded perfunctorily. Have you finished? If so, I'm going to find Lin Su to explain the problems to me. Seeing that I completely ignored her, Liang Xiao got angry. Fine, since you don't listen to me, let's stop being best friends. She used the tactic of retreating to advance, thinking that I would coax her like I used to. Unexpectedly, I nodded and turned around to find Lin Su with my test paper. With the experience of my previous life, I didn't dare to hang out with this love-struck girl anymore. I didn't ignore the flash of resentment in her eyes when she left, although I didn't know what evil she was plotting. There were only half a year left until the college entrance examination. And I didn't want to waste my precious time on her. Soon, it was January, and the final exam was approaching. Lin Su recently had to represent the school to participate in a citywide chemistry competition and had been receiving one-on-one training from the teacher these 2 days. It was snowing on the day of the competition. During lunch, I took a short break and scrolled through my phone for a while. Then I saw that my favorite milk tea shop had launched a new product. It was a winter limited edition, and I didn't even get to try it in my previous life. After all, it was already 10 o'clock when the evening self-study ended every time, and the milk tea shop had already closed. I forwarded it to Lin Su casually, and then I remembered that the competition was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon that day, and he should be about to leave at this time, so I didn't wait for his reply anymore. After returning to the classroom, I lay down on the desk and started to take a nap. In the past half-month, according to the study plan I had formulated before, I studied until 12 o'clock every night and got up at 5:30 in the morning to recite words. All in all, I only slept for 5.5 hours a day. The dark circles under my eyes are more obvious now than before. If it weren't for chewing instant coffee to keep myself awake, I'm afraid I would fall asleep during class. The heating was on in the classroom, and I soon fell asleep. In my dream, I seemed to sense that a gaze was fixed on me. I opened my eyes in a daze, and to my surprise, I saw Lin Su. We just adjusted the seats last week, and now I'm sitting by the window. Through the window glass, Lin Su, wearing a white down jacket, was standing outside, probably afraid of waking me up. He just looked at me quietly. I don't know how long he had been looking. It was all white outside, and the snow on the ground reflected the winter sunlight. His skin was very fair. He wasn't wearing a scarf, and the tip of his nose was slightly red from the cold. When he met my gaze, his eyelashes trembled slightly. I was still lying on the desk, but my right hand had already unconsciously reached out. The moment my fingertips touched the cold glass, my mind was completely awakened by the cold. I was just about to ask him why he came and didn't come in. Then I saw that he had already raised his left hand and placed it on top of my hand. His big hands with distinct bones directly covered mine. In comparison, my hand looked a bit petite. He curled his lips slightly, as if he was a bit happy. It was a world of ice and snow outside the window, but the way he looked at me was so gentle that it seemed to be able to melt the snow. Clearly, there was still a cold glass between us, but somehow I felt that my fingertips were getting a bit hot. At this moment, he suddenly leaned forward and blew a breath on the glass. Instantly, the whole glass was filled with mist, covering his face. I thought it was a bit funny and retracted my hand. I stood up, carefully walked around my deskmate who was taking a nap beside me, and went out to see him, but when I pushed open the classroom door, he had already turned around and left. In the snowy field in the afternoon, the back of the person wearing a white down jacket almost blended in with the snowflakes. On the windowsill, there was a cup of packaged milk tea left. It was the winter limited edition of the milk tea shop that I had just forwarded to him, probably because he had kept it in his arms all the way. When I took the milk tea in my hand, it was still steaming. Did this person make a detour to the school before the competition just to give me a cup of milk tea? He didn't even say a word. He's really a man of few words. I raised the corners of my lips happily. I was just about to take the milk tea back to the classroom, but when I turned around and saw the mist that hadn't dissipated on the glass, I froze in place. On it, the two characters, Jiao, which means come on, were written stroke by stroke. The light that didn't go out in the room late at night, the alarm clock at 5:30 in the morning, packets of instant coffee that were opened, a bundle of pen refills that were used up in half a month. He saw all my efforts. He doesn't know how to say love words, nor does he confess to me. He just accompanies me to work hard together. On a winter afternoon, he stood by the window, looking at my sleeping face, and silently wrote these two words, "Come on, come to my side." 7. On the day when the final exam scores came out, I rushed into the top 10 of the grade for the first time. The homeroom teacher, Mr. Fong, stood on the podium, smiling with many wrinkles on his face. He congratulated me with a gratified look in his eyes. "Song Yang has made great progress during this period. If this goes on, there's hope for you to get into university in next year. Everyone should learn from Song Yang." Hearing this, before I could be happy, my eyes subconsciously looked in Lin Su's direction. He was smiling. After meeting my gaze, He was stunned for a second, and then he silently mouthed the words "so great." He praised me, then I grinned and smiled. When the other students in the class saw this scene, they all made a ee sound in unison. My deskmate Jiang Yuan leaned into my ear and said as she used to, "I'm so envious. I also really want to have a little childhood friend who was recommended for admission to University A to explain the problems to me. It's no use being envious." I tried to straighten my face, but the smile in my eyes still couldn't be held back. "He's mine." Okay. Everyone is going to spend New Year's Eve together and welcome the new year. Remember to bring your top student Lin with you. She deliberately emphasized the word your. Hearing this, I realized that it had been almost 2 months since I was reborn. New Year's Eve, at this time in my previous life, because I was still in a cold war with Lin Su. I didn't go to the class gathering on New Year's Eve because I was afraid it would be awkward to meet him there. But later I found out that Lin Su didn't go either that night. He didn't go because he was afraid I would be embarrassed. He always seems to protect me in his own way. Quietly, after thinking about it, I extended an invitation to him on the way home. "Okay," he agreed without hesitation, and then he said a bit reluctantly, "But I have to go to my grandma's house first that night. Is it okay for you to go by yourself first? Am I a little kid who has to be accompanied by you?" He didn't say anything and turned to look at me. I just remembered that I had indeed stuck to his side every day since I was reborn. "I don't care, I'll act spoiled." 8. On New Year's Eve, I put on my newly bought clothes and went to the appointment. It snowed heavily on the way there, and I was still worried that it might be difficult to go back later, but when I got there, I found that Liang Xiao had actually brought 2 men with her. One was her junior college boyfriend Chen Fei from the previous life, and the other was her boyfriend's best friend Wang Xiang. These 2 were from the neighboring class. They usually acted like little hoodlums. Skipping class and going to the internet cafe were common occurrences, and they took turns writing self-criticisms under the national flag every month. It was just that Chen Fei was a bit good-looking and could speak some sweet words. He not only coaxed Liang Xiao around but also, in the previous life, handed me a love letter from his best friend Wang Xiang before the college entrance examination. He said it was for my own good, claiming that someone like Lin Su was beyond my reach. It would be better to be with his best friend, and then we could have a double date with our best friends in the future. I was so scared that I refused immediately, and she was even dissatisfied, saying that she had meant well. Later, when I thought about it, she clearly wanted to disrupt my state of mind before the college entrance examination. How malicious her intentions were. I thought it would be more lively with more people, so I brought 2 more people. "I hope no one minds," Liang Xiao said with a smile. Hearing this, the other classmates didn't know what to say. Everyone had agreed to go Dutch before coming, and now, even for Liang Xiao's sake, it wasn't appropriate to drive them away. I didn't look at them anymore and quickly walked over and sat down next to Jiang Yuan. Jiang Yuan immediately leaned over and whispered in my ear, "Save me. It was really wise of you to break up with her. Is she hopelessly in love? I really hope she can find someone better." "You're right." I pursed my lips.